Chapter 45. Into the Night. Hongyin Feijian shop. In front of the tea table, Chen Xianhe made Chen Daoxian a cup of spiritual tea, looked him up and down and said with a smile, "Is everything in the family okay?" "All good." Taking the amber teacup handed over by Chen Xianhe, Chen Daoxian nodded. After the conversation changed, Chen Daoxian smiled and said, "By the way, Uncle 13, how did you come up with the idea of selling Feijian in this way?" "Hear this." Chen Xianhe immediately blew his beard and stared, and said angrily, "It's not your kid's fault." After speaking, he couldn't help laughing first. "The flying sword you made is of high quality, and there is no other company in the whole city that can compare with it. But the number is too small, not enough for those loose cultivators." Speaking of this, Chen Xianhe shook his head regretfully. "By the way, how many flying swords did you bring this time?" Seemingly thinking of something, Chen Xianhe looked at Chen Daoxian expectantly and asked. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian smiled slightly, and immediately took out 55 flying swords from the storage bag. "The flying swords produced by the family during this period are all here." Chen Daoxian pointed to the neat pile of sword boxes on the ground. "See." Chen Xianhe stepped forward, opened the sword boxes one by one, and carefully checked the flying swords in the sword box. "Okay. This flying sword has 3 feet of sword light, the body of the sword has a flowing light, and the texture is excellent. This one is also good." Seeing Uncle 13 excited like a child, Chen Daoxian was also very happy. "Check it out." Chen Xianhe raised his head and said, "But why is there so little Feijian? I remember that we bought more than 3,000 spirit stones at the beginning. In addition to the ore reserves in the family, it should be more than refining this Feijian." "Yes." Hear this. Chen Daoxian stood up quietly. He walked to the door of the store, checked the closed door, and then set up a soundproof formation before returning to his seat and said with a serious face, "Uncle 13, this is a long story." Then, Chen Daoxian will talk about a series of things such as encountering the merman on the way back to Shuanghu Island last time, and reaching a cooperation with the merman. Listen to Chen Daoxian's story. Chen Ziyan's mouth opened wider and wider. He did not expect that the family had undergone so many changes in just 3 months. Not only did he reach a cooperation with the merman tribe, but he also found a fairy seedling in the tribe. When he heard that Chen Daoxian found a fairy seedling in the clan, Chen Xianhe couldn't help sighing. With the probability of mortals giving birth to spiritual root monks, there are dozens of fairy seedlings hidden in our Chen family. It's a pity that I haven't been able to detect the spiritual root qualifications of the young children of my family in these years. I am completely afraid that after detecting the immortal seedlings, I will not be able to cultivate them, which will only increase the pain. Having been the acting patriarch for such a long time, Chen Daoxian could not be more clear about the worries in Chen Ziyan's mouth. It is true that the Chen family is completely able to select all the immortal seedlings in the clan, and guide them on the path of cultivation. But then what? The Chen family has only one spiritual eye, which is only enough for Chen Daoxian to practice alone. Chen Xianhe even gave up his path for him. But can the other monks in the Chen family give up their practice for Chen Daoxian? Obviously not possible. After all, Chen Daoxian has the same identity as them, so why should they make sacrifices? As a result, the cultivators of the Chen family, who are short of spiritual energy resources, will inevitably fight infighting or even split. As for going to the battlefield of Izumo to fight for a way out, it is obvious that this road will not work either. The cultivator on the first floor of qi refining, the Qianyuan sword sect, would not even accept it. At that time, Chen Xianhe still relied on the military exploits of the cultivators of the Chen family Xian generation in the army to open the back door for Chen Xianhe to go to the battlefield. Otherwise, Chen Xianhe would not be qualified to set foot on the battlefield of Izumo with his cultivation of the 3rd level of qi refining. This is also the reason why Chen Xianhe painstakingly wanted to cultivate a spiritual vein for the family. Seeing the immortal seedlings of the family unable to practice because of lack of spiritual energy, this kind of pain is indescribable. Actually, from the heart, Chen Daoxian did not quite agree with the way Chen Xianhe managed the family. He thought that Chen Xianhe had put the cart before the horse. In Chen Daoxian's eyes, family monks or clan talents are the most important foundation of a family. In fact, the Chen family can completely select all immortal seedlings, and guide them on the path of cultivation. Even if these cultivators are only at the first level of qi refining, the Chun family can let them open up a deserted island in the sea near Shuanghu Island. The Chun family only needs to take out the spiritual stones in the clan library and buy slaves to open up deserted islands for farming, which is definitely better than waiting for death with the spirit stones in the clan library. In this way, only after several generations of hard work, the Chun family will surely slowly get out of the predicament. Unlike when Chan Xianhe held it, the family looked lifeless. From this point of view, Chan Xianhe, the head of the Chun family, was not qualified. Actually helpless. After all, Chan Xianhe was not the real patriarch of the Chun clan back then. The reason why he became the patriarch was entirely a helpless move after the family cultivator died in battle and was ordered in danger. Seeing that the smile on Chun Ziyan's face slowly disappeared, it became bitter again. Chun Daoxian quietly handed over a storage bag. This is... Chan Xianhe glanced at Chan Daoxian suspiciously. Uncle 13, open it and take a look. Hearing this, Chan Xianhe probed his consciousness into the storage bag, and in the next second he suddenly jumped up from his seat, looked at Chan Daoxian with a shocked expression, lowered his voice and said, Daoxian, you are intercepting and killing him. A monk from Guang'an House? Chan Daoxian was stunned at first when he heard the words, and then he smiled bitterly. Uncle 13. Can there be so many spirit stones for killing loose cultivators? That's true. Chan Xianhe nodded. Then how did you get these spirit stones? Although there is no detailed number, but according to Chan Ziyan's experience, this storage bag contains at least more than 50,000 spirit stones. What is this concept? In other words, this small storage bag contains at least half a first-order spiritual vein. How could Chan Xianhe not be shocked? Uncle 13. These spirit stones are all earned by me trading with the Mer people. You mean, you sold most of the flying swords you made to the mermen? Chan Daoxian nodded. Exactly. Hearing this answer, Chan Ziyan's heart jerked, and he looked at the flying sword on the ground, and suddenly felt that it was not fragrant. Then why don't you sell all these flying swords to the Mer people? Chan Xianhe was a little distressed, as if he had lost hundreds of millions. I don't think that the supply of flying swords is tight here, Uncle 13. Besides, although the profit of the merman market is high, the market size cannot be compared with that of Guang'an Prefecture. The human market is the largest market for our Chun family. Chan Xianhe agreed with this sentence. These days he finally felt the enthusiasm of the loose cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture. Chan Xianhe even believed that if he raised the price of flying swords in the store to 80 or even 100 spirit stones, a large number of loose cultivators would be willing to buy them. It's just that he always remembered what his nephew said to start the Hongyin Fijian signboard, so he chose to sell at the market price and did not take the opportunity to raise the price. And this kind of behavior has also established a good brand image for Hongyin Fijian in the minds of the majority of loose cultivators, making the reputation of Hongyin Fijian continue to expand. Up to now, almost all of the scattered repairers in the city of scattered repair shops have heard of such a Fijian shop, where the flying swords sold are not only of high quality but also cheap. The only downside is that the supply is insufficient and it is very difficult to buy. But this shortcoming is completely understandable in the eyes of loose cultivators, because the loose cultivators all know that it is not easy for an artifact refiner to refine flying swords, and they must be refined one by one, so no one takes the opportunity to cause trouble. After all, it is a good thing for all scattered cultivators to have such an affordable magic weapon shop in the city of scattered cultivators. Chapter 46. Uncle 13. Chan Daoxian pondered for a moment and said, in addition to purchasing enough spirit mines for the Fijian factory, I have one more important thing to do. You mean? Chan Daoxian nodded. I mean the cultivation of family spiritual veins should be put on the agenda. Hear this. Chan Ziyan's face was flushed with excitement, and he was speechless for a long time, so he had to take a sip from the teacup on the tea table to calm down his excitement. A long time. Chan Xianhe, who had adjusted his emotions, said in a trembling voice, our Chun family has finally waited for this day. Speaking of this, Chan Xianhe couldn't help but burst into tears. Uncle 13. Chan Xianhe raised his hand and waved. I'm fine, just a little happy, haha. Seeing Chan Ziyan's appearance, Chan Daoxian couldn't help feeling very sad. Who knows how Chan Xianhe has survived all these years since the 12 immortal monks of the Chan family died in the Battle of the Cloud Kingdom 50 years ago. In all fairness, Chan Xian's talent is mediocre, and it can even be said to be very poor. The means and ability to manage the family are also not very good. But it is such an ordinary cultivator of the Chan family who would rather keep the family's huge sum of more than 8,000 spiritual stones, and would rather give his spiritual energy resources to the younger cultivators, rather than abandon the family and the clansmen. Based on this alone, Chan Xianhe is worthy of his ancestors and his descendants, enough to be admired by the descendants of the Chan family. Wipe away tears. With a hoarse voice, Chan Xianhe said solemnly, cultivating a family's spiritual veins is no trivial matter, not only requires more than 100,000 spiritual stones, but also needs the assistance of a first-order spiritual formation. I don't need to worry about the spirit stone now, it's the spirit formation. Chan Xianhe thought for a while and said, I heard that Zhou's auction house in the core business district of Xiancheng, Guang'an Prefecture, holds a small auction at the beginning of each month, where there are complete sets of first and second-order Yunling formation methods and cloths. Array materials auction. Have to say, Chan Xianhe spent 3 months in the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture, and his familiarity with the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture also became unusual. Like Chan Daoxian, he didn't know where the Yunling Great Array was sold in Guang'an Prefecture. Hear the news. Chan Daoxian looked happy and said, Then what are you waiting for? We will go to the auction house tomorrow to see. Hearing this, Chan Xianhe laughed. Look at you impatient, Zhou's auction house will only hold an auction at the beginning of the month, and now count the days, there should be 3 days left. Taking advantage of this time, you can first prepare the materials for the spirit, or in the Feijian factory. Hearing these words, Chan Daoxian patted his and said, Uncle 13 is still thoughtful. Okay. Don't deliberately look for opportunities to flatter me. Kid, tell me, what are you holding back in your mind? Perhaps seeing the hope of the family cultivating spiritual veins, Chan Xianhe felt more relaxed than ever before, and even the tone of his speech was a bit detached. Uncle 13 is really smart, I can't hide anything from you. Chan Daoxian smiled. His face became serious again and said, Uncle 13, I want to order a few cargo ships from Yang's shipping line. Order a cargo ship? Chan Xianhe frowned. Why do I order a cargo ship? My Chun family's Songlong is usually enough to transport family supplies. Besides, the Feijian factory doesn't need so much spiritual ore for the time being, right? Cough cough, Chan Daoxian pretended to cough and lowered his voice. Accurately speaking, it is not a cargo ship, but a slave ship, heard. Chan Xianhe didn't know what Chan Daoxian was thinking. Looking for the Yang family to buy slave ships. Then the next step is to buy mortal female slaves from Izumo to multiply the population for the Chun family. In fact, Chan Xianhe has occasionally purchased slaves from Izumo over the years, but the number is not large. For example, the servants in Chan Lianjia's family came like this. But listening to Chan Daoxuan's tone now, it is obvious that it is not as simple as buying dozens or hundreds of female slaves. He is going to make a big deal. Otherwise, they would not go to the Yang family shipping line to buy a special slave ship. Thinking of this, Chan Xianhe couldn't help but hesitate. Seeing that the family is about to accumulate enough spiritual stones to cultivate spiritual veins, now they are buying slaves and slave ships, plus the funds for purchasing spiritual or in purchasing the Great Spirit Formation from the auction house. Although there are many tens of thousands of spirit stones in the storage bag, they can't stand it. Seeing Chan Xian's hesitant expression, Chan Daoxian couldn't help but straighten his face, and said, Uncle 13, you can't keep your word. Chan Xianhe was stunned by Chan Daoxuan's question, and looked up and said, How come I can't believe my words? You forgot? You promised me before that as long as my Chun family earns 3,000 spirit stones a year, you promised me to let go of cultivating the descendants of the Chun family. How can I say nothing now? Hearing this, Chan Xianhe almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. He promised Chan Daoxian that he would consider cultivating the descendants of the Chun family as long as the family's annual income reached 3,000 spirit stones, but he did not expect that Chan Daoxian would be trained in such a way. If he knew what Chan Daoxian meant, he would not agree to kill him. Seeing Chan Xian's dark face, Chan Daoxian continued, Uncle 13, think about it. What does 100,000 spirit stones mean to my Chun family now? Do you know how many Fijians our family's Fijian factory can produce in a day? A full 5. This is only the output of my nephew and me a day. If my Chun family has 10 refiners, what will happen then? Hearing this, Chan Xianhe sneered. Don't coax me, are artifact refiners so easy to train? Even if the resources are sufficient, if one of the 10 monks can train a refiner, it will be a good incense. That's right. It's because the training rate of artifact refiners is not high, so we need to increase the number of cultivators in the family. And what do we rely on to increase the number of cultivators in the family? We have to rely on ordinary members of the Chan family. Therefore, it is imperative to buy slave ships and female slaves from Izumo. Chun Daoxian said this sentence not in a negotiating tone, but in the capacity of a Chan clan chief. Looking at the chatty young man in front of him, Chan Xianhe opened his mouth and said nothing in the end. Never mind, Chan Xianhe sighed. Since the family has been handed over to you, it's up to you to decide these matters. Thank you, Patriarch, for your support. Chun Daoxian stood up and bowed to Chan Xianhe. Chan Xianhe waved his hand. Although I don't quite agree with your way of doing things, I can see that the family has shown a prosperous face in your hands. Daoxian, you are stronger than me. Chan Xianhe looked directly into Chan Daoxuan's eyes and said with relief. Hearing this compliment, Chun Daoxian felt a little embarrassed. Chapter 47. 3 days later. The core business district of Guang'an Prefecture. Wus Treasure Pavilion. The goods of the 2 fellow Taoists will be delivered on time by our Wus Treasure Pavilion, so please rest assured. At the entrance of Wus Treasure Pavilion, a cultivator of the Wu family's foundation building bowed to Chan Daoxian and Chan Xianhe with a smile on his face. Then it's troublesome for the seniors, please stay. Chun Daoxian bowed his hands and bowed, and said humbly. Wu Jiaji cultivator nodded. You two, please walk slowly. In a guest voice, Chun Daoxian and Chan Xianhe walked out of the gate of Wus Treasure Pavilion. Soon after the two left, a young cultivator in the store stepped forward and asked in a low voice, Uncle, why are you being so polite to the mere 2 chi cultivating cultivators? Wouldn't it be a loss of my Wus dignity to do so? After hearing this, the foundation building cultivator glanced at the young Wu cultivator and frowned. Guangshuan, you must remember that in doing business in Guang'an Mansion, your sanity is more important than your face. The 2 cultivators just now are indeed not very high level. One has the 6th level of qi refining, and the other has only the 4th level of qi refining. But do you know how much profit they can bring to my Wus Treasure Pavilion? The young monk named Wu Guangshuan shook his head blankly. The Wu family cultivator stretched out 4 fingers and said, a full profit of more than 4,000 spirit stones. So much. Hearing this, Wu Guangshuan was stunned. He did not expect that the mere 2 chi cultivators could have such a rich net worth. They can make a profit of 4,000 spirit stones from Wus Treasure Pavilion, which proves that these 2 at least negotiated a business worth tens of thousands of spirit stones with Wus Treasure Pavilion. How could this not shock him, the fledgling Wu family cultivator? So, when doing business in Guang'an Prefecture, you can't judge people by their appearance, and you can't judge the size of the business based on the customer's cultivation. There are millions of cultivators in our Guang'an house, among which there are not 100,000 or tens of thousands of foundation building cultivators. With so many foundation building cultivators, how many can have these 2 families? Besides, do you know what their background is? Uncle clan means. The Wu family cultivator said angrily, I mean, keep your eyes brighter in the future. Don't bring me the stinking problem of the eyes above the top that you got in the family and bring it to the Wus Treasure Pavilion. Otherwise you're the experience assessment. The old man will definitely give you a fail. Sure enough, hearing this sentence, Wu Guangshuan's face turned pale immediately. Although the Wu family is a well-known foundation-building clan in Guang'an Prefecture, but because it is a large clan, the number of cultivators in the clan is also exceptionally large. If a chi cultivating cultivator like him who came out to experience fails the training test, the impact on his personal future will be devastating. In this regard, the practices of the major families are almost the same. It is true that a cultivator's spiritual aptitude is very important, but compared to the spiritual aptitude, Xinqing is more important to a family member. A cultivator with a bad temperament, even if he is cultivated to the foundation establishment or even the Zifu period, not only cannot bring much help to the family, but may lead to catastrophic disasters. In this regard, There are countless examples of mischievous family children who have caused trouble for the family due to their poor temperament and troubles. Therefore, the longer the family has inherited, the more emphasis is placed on cultivating the character of the family's children. When it comes to cultivating the character of the family's children, whether it's the Yang family or the Wu family, or even the Zhou family with inflated self-confidence, they have done a good job. Walk out of Wu's treasure pavilion. Chen Daoxian and the two walked in the bustling core business district, chatting while walking. How long do you plan to stay in Guang'an Mansion? Chen Xianhe asked casually. After pondering for a moment, Chen Daoxian smiled and said, "It will take some time before the slave ship ordered from the Yang family will arrive. And in addition to the need to choose a wife for the clan, why should I stay for 10 days and a half months?" Hearing this, Chen Xianhe felt rather regretful. Alas, as soon as you leave, even if the family's Feijian production stops, it makes people feel distressed to think about it. So, how important it is to increase the population of the tribe. Hearing this, Chen Xianhe had to nod and admit that there were too few cultivators in the family. So much so that Chen Daoxian, an important productive force, had to abandon the production work of his family's Feijian factory, and came here to be responsible for transporting goods and purchasing materials. If there is one more monk in the family, this kind of errand work will never be his turn. Thinking of this, Chen Xian said, "Don't come to Guang'an House next time. Didn't you order a boat from the Yang family? Next time, I will go directly to Shuanghu Island to pick up the goods and transport the spiritual mine. In the future, you will leave the errands to me, and you can concentrate on the production work of the family Feijian factory." This. Chen Daoxian hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "That's fine. Talking room." The two soon came to Zhou's auction house. Zhou's auction house is located in the most prosperous area in the core business district of Xiancheng, Guang'an Prefecture. An inch of land and an inch of gold are not enough to describe it, because the land and shops in this entire area belong to the Zhou family alone. Zhou's auction house is the most conspicuous one in this area. Chen Daoxian looked up and saw a group of quaint multi-story attic buildings standing in front of him. These attics cover an extremely wide area, and Chen Daoxian visually estimated that there were at least tens of thousands of square meters. At a glance, the entire street was occupied by this auction house. Even in the entire core business district, Zhou's auction house is a landmark building. Zhou's auction house has a total of 12 small auction houses. The largest auction hall in the middle is not open to the public at ordinary times. It is only open to the public when there is a major auction event. Chen Xianhe explained, "We are going to the 6th auction house today." Chen Daoxian looked around, and finally found a capital number 6 written on the left side of the plaque in an attic. "Right here." Seeing the destination, Chen Xianhe smiled. "Two Taoists, please stay." The two were about to enter the door, but were blocked by the Zhou cultivator who was waiting at the door. Seeing this, Chen Daoxian frowned and said, "Fellow Taoist, what does this mean?" Who knows that the Zhou family cultivator is not surprised, and said, "This is the first time for the two fellow Taoists to come to my Zhou's auction house? Does this have anything to do with you blocking our way?" Chen Daoxian asked back. Fellow Taoist misunderstood. This auction is to prevent someone from bidding maliciously, resulting in the final auction of treasures, so a set of rules for verifying identity has been formulated. Verify your identity? The two looked at each other, and Chen Daoxian asked curiously, "I don't know, what is the way to verify your identity?" "Simple, just check whether the amount of spirit stones in the 2 storage bags reaches 5,000 spirit stones, and then you can verify your identity." Hearing this, Chen Xianhe nodded clearly, while Chen Daoxian was almost dumbfounded. This has all crossed into the world of cultivating the immortals, and what about the verification of capital? Not enough funds to let in? Immediately, a rough-faced man walked by the two of them, but the Zhou cultivator did not stop the other party in the slightest. Chen Daoxian couldn't help asking, "Why didn't you stop him?" "Fellow Taoist is joking, that is senior foundation establishment. How could he have made a malicious bid?" Seeing the Zhou family cultivator's smiling face, Chen Daoxian was disgusted as if he had eaten a fly. He threw a storage bag at random and said, "This is our identification." The Zhou family cultivator took the storage bag and checked it out. Immediately, his expression changed, and he respectfully handed back the storage bag, moved aside and said, "Two fellow Taoists, please." Chapter 48. Zhou's Auction House. In a box in the number 6 auction hall. The maid who served spirit tea and spirit fruit to the two of them withdrew. Chen Daoxian glanced at the spacious auction hall and said with emotion, "The Zhou family is magnificent. Such a large auction hall is only a branch of Zhou's auction house." Yes, Chen Xianhe nodded. Every box here is paved with inkstones that block spiritual detection to protect the privacy of customers to the greatest extent. Heard. Chen Daoxian swept it with his divine sense, and sure enough, as Chen Xianhe said, when his divine sense swept into other people's boxes, it was blocked by a layer of invisible power. After observing, Chen Daoxian and Chen Xianhe quietly waited for the auction to start. After a stick of incense. When the customers who came to participate in the auction arrive one after another, the auction officially begins. On the auction table in the center of the hall, there was an old man with a childish appearance. The old man was a foundation-building cultivator of the Zhou family, and he seemed to be very familiar with hosting such auctions. With a few opening remarks, the auction officially started. The first treasure to be auctioned was a bottle of second-order spiritual elixir Huiyuan Dan. After taking it, it could help the cultivator restore 30% of his true essence, but only one pill could be taken within a month. Otherwise, if it is taken continuously in a short period of time, the erysipelas will cause irreversible wounds to the body of the monk. The old man introduced, "Everyone knows the characteristics of Huiyuan Dan, so I won't say more. There are 10 Huiyuan Dan in a bottle. The starting price is 2,000 spirit stones, and the price must not be lower than 100 spirit stones each time." The voice just fell. In the box, I remembered the sound of bidding. 2,100 spirit stones. 2,300 spirit stones. The price of a bottle of Huiyuan Dan was higher and higher, and finally 2,500 spirit stones were sold. Silently listening to the final transaction price of the medicinal pill, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but sigh. The market price of Huiyuan Dan is only 200 spirit stones. After his auction, the price has increased by 25%. The Zhou family is really good at it. Do business. Chen Xianhe shook his head. Compared with the magic weapon market, medicinal pills are more in short supply. It is common to buy at a premium, and a 25% premium is not too much of a loss. Next, one treasure after another was sold by the auction house. There was no vicious auction during this period. In fact, it is normal to think about it. Zhou's auction house held an auction every other month, and the treasures auction were actually publicized in this month's time. Those who come to the auction have clear goals, and they already have a psychological price for the target they shoot. Unless someone fancy the same treasure. Otherwise, even auctions rarely occur, and they are basically obtained at a price that is less than 20% to 30% higher than the auction reserve price. After all, no one's spirit stone was blown by the wind, and the behavior of mindless bidding will only appear in a small talk book. Everyone knows that spiritual veins are hard to find, but cultivators must have aura in their cultivation. The items to be auctioned next are the first-order spirit formation techniques and materials for cultivating the spiritual veins. The starting price is 1,000 spirit stones. Each edition shall not be less than 100 spirit stones. When the target appeared, Chen Daoxian and the two in the box were immediately excited. 1,100 spirit stones. Chen Daoxian made a bid. 1,200 spirit stones. In another box there was a bidding sound. 200 spirit stones at a time. 1,500 spirit stones. Chen Daoxian immediately raised the price of the spirit stones to 1,500 spirit stones, which was a full 50% increase over the auction price. This bid immediately caused a lot of discussion in the box. 1,500 spirit stones, just to buy a grand formation. The foundation-building cultivator in the box next to Chen Daoxian shook his head. It's really too much money to burn, really. Chen Daoxian's rapid price increase directly frightened the opponent who dared to bid with him, and the first-order Yunling formation officially fell into his hands. After buying the Yunling Great Array, Chen Daoxian and Chen Xianhe immediately relaxed. For them, the goal has been achieved, and the rest is to watch the fun. Soon, the auction is halfway through. At this time, the old man coughed and introduced rather embarrassedly, "This treasure auction below is a cultivation technique that flourished in ancient times." The old man paused. Ancient practice? Chen Daoxian was immediately aroused by curiosity. The name of this practice is Dragon Python Swallowing Heaven. It is the ultimate method of body training in ancient times. This practice is cultivated to a certain level, enough to allow monks to use their physical bodies to resist magic weapons, and it is extremely powerful. After embarrassingly blowing out this exercise, the old man knocked on the auction hammer and said, "The bidding price of Dragon Mang Swallowing Heaven is 1,000 spirit stones, and the price increase shall not be less than 100 spirit stones each time." However, this time, a rare cold scene at the auction site. No one bid, but all looked at the Zhou family foundation cultivator with interest. The old man waited for a long time and saw that no one had bid, so he could only embarrassedly said, "Since all fellow Taoists dislike this practice, then 1,000 spirit stones. Okay, there is a Taoist friend bidding for 1,000 spirit stones. Is there anyone else bidding?" Looking around, seeing no answer, the old man said decisively, "Congratulations to the guests in box number 7, who have obtained the ancient body training exercise, Dragon Python Swallowing Heaven." Snapped. The auction hammer falls and the deal is finalized. In box 7, Chen Xianhe looked at Chen Daoxian speechlessly, and said, "Why are you buying this? What's the matter? Is it difficult to practice body exercises?" Chen Daoxian wondered. Cultivation is not difficult. Chen Xianhe pondered for a moment. Do you know why this popular body training method has gradually been abandoned by our cultivator group? Why? Chen Daoxian was also very curious. It stands to reason that such a top-level body training method should not sit on the bench, but the reality is that everyone is showing little interest in this body training method. This is obviously not common sense. Because it's too resource-intensive to practice body refinement exercises. Chen Xianhe shook his head. Someone has calculated in detail that a cultivator who practices physical exercises at the same time consumes more than 10 times the resources of a normal cultivator of the same rank. So many resources are enough for you to buy 10 top-notch defensive instruments, so why bother to spend time and effort in cultivating physical exercises? I see. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian didn't care much, because he knew that the Chen family would lack everything in the future, and the only thing they didn't lack might be cultivation resources. No one knows better than him that once industrial production is realized, resources will flow to their Chen family like a tide. At that time, what the Chen family lacks is not resources, but how to convert resources into strength. Chen Daoxian felt that it was not a loss for 1,000 spiritual stones to buy a top-notch body refining method that could enhance the strength of the tribe in the future. Bought 2 items. Chen Daoxian already felt that the trip was complete, and he didn't plan to make any more bids to buy things, just waiting for the auction to end. After half an hour, the auction is coming to an end. As the final treasure, the Zhou family also took out a treasure that is unique to them, the water spirit bead. And it is not an ordinary first-order water spirit bead, but a second-order water spirit bead. The last item to be auctioned is the second-order water spirit bead, a treasure that my Zhou clan abounded in. The efficacy of the second-order water spirit bead, I don't need to go into details here, just to mention that it can be used in conjunction with medicinal pills at the same time to assist cultivators. Practice. Sure enough, the words of the old man of the Zhou family completely ignited the atmosphere of the scene. Even Chen Daoxian's eyes became hot when he saw the second-order water spirit beads. Chen Daoxian couldn't understand how strong the effect of this thing was. He was able to cultivate from the 3rd level of qi refining to the 4th level of qi refining so quickly, and Shui Lingzhu was indispensable. What's more, the 10 water spirit beads photographed by Zhou's family are still second-order water spirit beads, and their effect is stronger than that of first-order second-order water spirit beads. A total of 10 second-order water spirit beads. The auction price is 10,000 spirit stones, and each increase must not be less than 1,000 spirit stones. Please bid. The old man Zhou smiled. The fact that Zhou's auction house is so popular is also related to the fact that they often end up auctioning water spirit beads. Well known. In the Wuxia Sea area, only the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture can sell water spirit beads. Other families also wanted to learn from the Zhou family to capture mermen, but they simply didn't have the Zhou family's unique way of capturing them. Chapter 49. Just when everyone was gearing up, in the number 1 box of the auction hall, a sinister voice sounded. The disciples of the Yi family in Xiaozhangzhou, I would like to ask all of you to show some respect. My Yi family would like to thank you all here. The voice just fell. The auction hall suddenly became audible. In box 7, Chen Daoxian only felt that a strange atmosphere was brewing in the auction hall, and the fiery atmosphere that was just harmonious was no longer at all. On the auction table. Hearing this, the old man of the Zhou family suddenly turned gloomy, but he seemed to be afraid, as if he dared to be angry and did not dare to speak. Seeing that everyone didn't speak, the voice in box number 1 rang again. In this case, Yi Mao would like to thank you all for your love. The Yi family cultivator cupped his hands proudly and said proudly, 10,000 spirit stones. The old man of the Zhou family on the auction platform had an ugly face, but because of the rules, he still said solemnly, the guest in box number 1 bid 10,000 spirit stones. Is there anyone who has bid higher? He asked several times in a row, but no one answered. Seeing the Zhou family's constant inquiries, the Yi family cultivator in the number 1 box became impatient and urged, fellow Taoist Zhou, please hurry up. Didn't you see that everyone gave up bidding? The old man of the Zhou family ignored him and continued to inquire there. This time, the face of the cultivator of the Yi family's foundation turned completely ugly. He wanted to attack, but he seemed to take into account that this was the Zhou family's territory, so he had to endure his unhappiness. In box 7, Chen Daoxian suddenly heard a rapid gasp beside him. He turned around and saw the 13th Uncle Chen Xianhe with a grim expression on his face. Uncle 13, what's wrong with you? Chen Daoxian said with concern. Yi family. Yi family. Chen Xianhe groaned in pain like a madman. Chen Daoxian had never seen Uncle 13, who was always amiable in front of him, showing such great killing intent. He seemed to understand something, turned his head to look in the direction of box 1, and said solemnly, my Chen family has a grudge against the Zhangzhou Yi family? Have a grudge? A sea of hatred. Chen Xian's eyes were red, his eyes were cracked, and he gritted his teeth. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian made a decision in his heart. Just when he was about to make a bid, a rough voice resounded in box number 6 next to him. Wait a minute, who said no one has bid? Lao Tzu bid 11,000 spirit stones. Hearing these arrogant and domineering words, the stagnant atmosphere in the auction hall was completely broken. 12,001 spirit stones. Think about it clearly, fellow Taoists. Do you really choose to be my enemy of the Yi family? Seeing this situation, the Yi family cultivator in box 1 became anxious and threatened in public. This time, the rough voice in box number 6 sounded again. Hey old man Zhou, there are people who are always threatening us. Do you care about the Zhou family? Heard. The old man of the Zhou family said with a sullen smile, please also ask the guests in box 1 to follow the rules of this auction house. Otherwise I will have to invite you out. Inside box 1, Yi Xiaoqin's face flushed red. His whole body was full of real energy, as if he was about to take action in the next second. As the largest immortal family in Zhangzhou, when has the Yi family been so humiliated by others? But thinking that this is Guang'an Mansion, and thinking of the embarrassing situation of the Yi family over the years, Yi Xiaoqin had to endure it. 13,000 spirit stones. According to the auction rules, he set a price that made him extremely painful. 14,001 spirit stones. Hearing the disgusting sound of bidding in box number 6, Yi Xiaoqin couldn't bear it any longer. He stood up suddenly, and the power belonging to the Foundation Establishment cultivator exploded. Affected by this power, Chen Daoxian, who was sitting in box number 7, only felt a huge sense of panic rising from the bottom of his heart. How is this possible? Chen Daoxian was a little unbelievable. He knew that his strength was far from being the opponent of the base-building cultivator, but he did not expect that he could not even bear the aura of the base-building cultivator. This is too exaggerated. Chen Daoxian admitted that although his cultivation was only at the 4th level of qi refining, his strength was definitely not weak among qi refining cultivators, and could even be regarded as the top level. The first-order high-grade magic weapon, the flying snow sword, the wind-chasing sword art of the perfect realm, and the rain-covering sword art of the Deshang realm. As far as explosive power is concerned, Chen Daoxian definitely belongs to the top level among the cultivators in the qi refining period. The only shortcoming is that it is not durable enough. Even so, He couldn't even hold the momentum of the Foundation Establishment cultivator, let alone the two confrontation. Chen Daoxian reckoned that if the two really fought, the Foundation Establishment cultivator would likely kill him with a single sword. He thought that he had just wanted to intervene in the competition for the foundation building cultivators, and he couldn't help but feel a little scared. No matter how safe Guang'an Mansion is, if this cultivator of the Yi family becomes angry and kills him on the spot, will the Zhou family kill this cultivator of the Yi family foundation for his little Qin family cultivator? Probably not. After all, the Yi family was the largest immortal cultivating family in Songzhou, and the ancestor of the family was a genuine Jindan cultivator. How dare the Zhou family provoke such a great enemy for him? In the end, the Zhou family suppressed the matter and pretended that nothing happened. As for the life and death of his little Chen family cultivator, who would care? Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but feel a chill. Although he didn't know the enmity between the Chen family and the Yi family, he thought it had something to do with the 12 cultivators of the Xianzi generation who died in battle 50 years ago. Thoughts flipping. The scene suddenly changed again. What? Is this the character of the Yi family cultivator? Can't afford the price and want to force it? Inside box number 6, a rough voice sounded again. And this voice was accompanied by a more terrifying aura than Yi Xiuqin. Little brat of the Yi family, others are afraid of your Yi family, but I am not afraid of Lei Zhan. 7th floor cultivator of foundation building. It's actually a late foundation building cultivator. The auction hall suddenly became a mess as the two of them rattled their swords. Yi Xiuqin felt the other party's cultivation in the late stage of foundation establishment, and panic flashed in his eyes. But thinking that this is Wan Xinghai, the Guang'an mansion of the Zhou family, not the chaotic battlefield of Izumo, Yi Xiuqin let go of his heart slightly, and he said sternly, "Humph! No wonder the cultivators of the Yun country call me cultivator Wan Xinghai, an overseas cultivator. It's really vulgar." As everyone knows, this map cannon completely angered the base building cultivators present. Chen Daoxian found that even 1 or 2 qi refining cultivators joined the bidding. Things have now turned into a complete farce. Yi Xiuqin knew in his heart that he would not be able to buy the water spirit beads of the Zhou family today no matter what. Humph! My Yi family has learned how to treat guests in Guang'an Mansion today. I, Yi Xiuqin, keep this humiliation in my heart. After speaking, he threw his hands and walked away. Seeing the Yi family cultivator leave, everyone cheered like a triumphant soldier. Go away! What Yi family cultivator? The trash who fled in fear of the battle, dare to come to my Guang'an mansion to be savage. Hearing the accusations of the many foundation building cultivators in the auction hall, Yi Xiaoqin's face was blue and he didn't say a word. Chapter 50. With the end of the auction, Chen Daoxian and the two left the auction house together. Along the way, Chen Xianhe was depressed and said nothing. Chen Daoxian, who didn't know what to do, was not good at comforting him, so he had to stay by his side quietly. Wait until the cloud-treading beasts and beasts drive to the front of the Hongyin Feijian store. Chen Daoxian reminded softly, "Uncle 13, we are here." "Oh, are you here yet?" Just went to the auction house. Chen Xianhe looked a lot older, and there was a hint of twilight in his eyes. For 3 days in a row, Chen Xianhe, who was in a low mood, recovered. "Daoxuan, I've worried you these past few days." Inside the store, Chen Xianhe smiled reluctantly at Chen Daoxian and said. Seeing that Chen Xianhe took the initiative to talk to him for the first time in 3 days, Chen Daoxian quickly put down the things in his hand and said with a sigh of relief, "Uncle 13, as long as you are fine." Hearing this, Chen Xianhe nodded. Just as he was helping Chen Daoxian sort out the things in the store, Chen Daoxian said calmly, "Uncle 13, how could my Chen family have a grudge against the Yi family in Songzhou City? It stands to reason that the Yi family is the largest family in Songzhou, and the ancestor Yi Wudao is a well-known Jindan cultivator. Such an extremely powerful Xiuxian family, even the Zhou family dare not provoke it. How could it be enmity with the Chen family on the small Shuanghu Island?" Hearing this, Chen Xianhe became a little excited again. He took a deep breath, slowly calmed down, and said in a low voice, "You should have heard about the relationship between Wan Xinghai and Izumo 50 years ago. Battle of Zenangguan, right?" As a Songzhou cultivator, Chen Daoxian had never heard of the famous Zenangguan battle. But at this time, listening to Chen Xian's meaning, this battle seems to have another hidden meaning. As one of the 7 immortal cities established by Jianzong of Qinyuan in Izumo, Zenangwen has always played a role in guarding the southern front of Izumo. But just 50 years ago, this famous immortal city was lost due to a defeat in the war. I have to say that this is a huge blow to the Qianyuan sword sect and the Wanxinghai cultivator who have been making great progress for 400 years. Because of this, Zhangzhou cultivators, who were the main guarding force, were often stabbed in the spine by cultivators from other states when they walked in the Wanxinghai Sea. When Chen Daoxian recounted the Battle of Zenangwen, he knew. Chen Xianhe let out a sneer. What nonsense! Chen Xian's face was sarcastic. All you know is all propaganda by Qinyuan Jianzong. The real Zenangwen battle is not what you said at all because… Chen Xianhe paused because 50 years ago, this old man was a sergeant guarding Zenangwen. Speaking of this, the pain in Chen Xian's eyes flashed away. Back then, the Xianqing Taoist League formed by the Xianyang sect and the Qinghui Taoist sect dispatched an army of monks to surprise Zenangwen. The other party dispatched a total of nearly 1 million monks of all ranks, and under the leadership of 5 Jindan real people, they launched an attack on Jinan Xiancheng. At that time, there was only one Jindan cultivator sitting in the town of Nanxian City, the ancestor of the Yi family, Yi Wudao. Speaking of the name Yi Wudao, Chen Xianhe became excited again. After a long while, he continued to speak. Even if the enemy has 5 Jindan real people and an army of 1 million cultivators, there are also an army of more than 1 million cultivators in Nanxian City in my town. When the reinforcements arrive, there is no problem at all. Speaking of this, Chen Xian's voice became painful again. But Yi Wudao, who is greedy for life and fear of death, actually feared the power of the enemy's 5 Jindan real people, abandoned the city and fled. Did you know? He actually used his escape cards to abandon Jinan Xianqing in full view of the public. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's fist clenched involuntarily. Have pity on the millions of monks in Zenangwen. After all, they couldn't resist the onslaught of the enemy's 5 Jindan real people. In the end, Zenangwen was broken. My monks in Songzhou were killed and captured, and there were more than 1 million people. I am the only one of the 13 cultivators of the immortal generation of the Chen family, and I am the only one who survived, while the others cannot even find their bones. Saying that, Do Da's tears fell from Chen Xian's red eyes. The first time he heard this kind of secret, Chen Daoxian said angrily, "Does Qinyuan Jianzong care about this kind of thing that happens when you flee in fear of the enemy?" 2. Chen Xianhe shook his head. Do you know why there is such a big pass in Jinan Xiancheng? Only one Jindan cultivator, Yi Wudao, is in charge? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian seemed to think of something. Zenangwen has always been the pass with the fewest battles between Qinyuan Jianzong and Izumo. In other words, sitting in this immortal city not only does not have much risk but will get a lot of military exploits. This kind of fat shortage, if there is no one on Yi Wudao, it is impossible to get it. Even in order to take all the military exploits for himself, Yi Wudao even chose to guard the South Pass alone. But who would have thought that the Xianqing Dao League would choose to surprise Zenangwen? Really? Chen Xianhe explained in a deep voice. Yi Wudao's biological father is the 3rd elder of Qinyuan Jianzong, the famous Yuanying Zhenjuan. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian finally figured out the cause and effect of Zenangwen's fall. Chen Daoxian opened his mouth and sighed. Even so, Qinyuan Jianzong didn't kill Yi Wudao. Aren't you afraid that the monks on the battlefield of Izumo will lose their hearts? Military heart? Chen Xianhe shook his head. How can you ask such naive words? Do you think that Qinyuan Jianzong drives the Wanxinghai cultivator to rely on military spirit? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but be surprised. Indeed, Qinyuan Jianzong's envoy Wanxinghai cultivator did not rely on military will at all, but naked interests. Loose cultivators want to obtain cultivation resources, and want to advance to a foundation building or even higher cultivation level. Going to the battlefield of Izumo is the best way. In the face of interests, what is the point of an escaped Jindan cultivator? As for fairness, morality, and the grievances of those Zhangzhou cultivators who died in battle, who would care? What the earth could not do in the previous life, let alone in this cruel world of immortal cultivation. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian was silent. He looked at Chen Xianhe with the vicissitudes of life, and swore in his heart that if he succeeded in cultivation in the future, He would definitely seek justice for the 12 immortal monks of the Chan family, and for the 13th uncle who had been tortured by hatred all these years. After this incident, Qianyuan Jianzong announced that Zenangwen had lost the war, but the Zhangzhou cultivator knew in his heart that it was not a war failure at all, but that Yi Wudao fled in fear. Chan Xianhe shook his head. Forget it, you've heard about this today, and it's just a dream, don't worry about it, Yi family, we can't afford it. Speaking, Chan Xianhe couldn't help laughing at himself. Perhaps the Yi family doesn't even know that they are on a small island in Guang'an Prefecture, and there is an enemy like us. Hearing this, Chan Daoxian couldn't help feeling a little distressed. Perhaps the most painful thing in life is that you treat others as enemies of life and death, but in the eyes of your enemies there is no reptile like you at all. Chapter 51. Guang'an Port. Yang's shipping line. An old man with gray hair in his late 60s, but full of energy, was dancing and introducing the 10 slave ships he ordered to Chan Daoxian. Fellow Daoist Chan, this is the best-selling slave ship of our Yang's shipping line. This ship is more than 150 feet long and 20 feet wide, and it can transport more than 1,000 slaves at most. You can look at the materials of our slave ship. The main material of the hull is made of heavy iron wood, which can prevent seawater erosion. The keel is engraved with the method of gathering wind and avoiding water, allowing you to gallop freely in the sea. As we all know, the biggest problem with slave ships is the death of slaves in the sea, and our slave ships have also made good improvements in this regard. Fellow Daoist Chan, please come with me. The old man of Yang's shipping company led Chan Daoxian into the cabin with vigorous steps, and carefully inspected the various conveniences of the slave ship. After listening to the old man's introduction, Chan Daoxian was very satisfied, but his face was very indifferent. The quality of Yang's boats is well known in the entire Guang'an Prefecture. Otherwise I wouldn't have found you right away. That is our ship. Before the old man could finish speaking, Chan Daoxian smiled and said, but your prices are also much more expensive than Zhou's, Zhao's and Wu's. Hearing this, the old man Yang's expression stiffened, and then he smiled and said, you get what you pay for. If I say that our Chun family will buy a large number of ships in the next few years, I wonder if we can get your internal lowest price? Oh. The old man Yang's heart moved slightly. I don't know what Dao Chan said about buying ships in large quantities. At least 100 ships. Chun Daoxian raised a finger and said. Hearing the words, the old man of the Yang family cupped his hands and said with a smile, fellow Daoist Chan, how can this old man trust you? Have you heard of the Hongyin Feijian shop? Hearing this, the old man Yang's face finally flashed a hint of surprise, and he cupped his hands. It turns out that the Hongyin Feijian shop in Sangxiafang City has been buzzing recently. It's your Chen's business, disrespectful. The old man Yang's expression finally turned serious. As we all know, the Shuanghu Island Chen family behind the Hongyin Feijian store is a small family, but because its family has a refiner, it is remembered by many foundation-building families. That is to say, the Chun family on Shuanghu Island has not been well known for a long time. In addition, the supply of Hongyin Feijian stores is insufficient. It is speculated that the rank of the Chun family's craftsmen should not be high. Otherwise, the foundation establishment family would have gone to make friends with him. In Guang'an Mansion, foundation-building families are not uncommon, and even some foundation-building families are living in a very poor life, and the foundation-building monks in the clan are not yet scattered. This kind of foundation-building family is completely lucky, and it was only by luck that the family's children made enough credits on the battlefield of Izumo to break through to the foundation-building stage. Such a foundation-building family in terms of background is not much stronger than those small families. For them, being able to make friends with a senior artifact refiner is something they can't ask for. At least in the future, when family children need magic tools, they don't need to buy second-hand goods that were eliminated by the big family children. Although the Yang family is a large immortal cultivator in Guang'an Prefecture, they have always had the problem of insufficient supply of magical instruments within the clan. The reason for this is that the Yang family put all of their energy into the construction of various ships, ignoring the cultivation of the alchemists and alchemists within the clan, resulting in the supply of magical tools and medicinal pills within the clan has been controlled by the Zhou family. Faced with this situation, Yang has always wanted to reverse it. However, cultivating alchemists and alchemists has too high requirements for various resources and backgrounds in the clan. Not everyone is as perverted as Chen Daoxian, who can teach himself by holding a copy of second-order refining equipment and inheriting jade slips. Chen Daoxian's behavior in his previous life is equivalent to the exaggeration of an illiterate person holding a few books and self-taught to become a doctor in a few years. This is also the reason why the Yang family has been wandering in all directions, constantly attracting major foundation-building families and emerging forces, hoping to jointly build a fairy city to fight against the Zhou family. It is a political task within the Yang family to make friends with a family that has an alchemist and an alchemist. Therefore, the old man showed a serious look after hearing that Chen Daoxian reported himself to his family. After pondering for a moment, the old man raised his head and said, "In this case, this slave ship, even if it is 1,000 spiritual stones for fellow Taoists, and 10 slave ships, a total of 10,000 spiritual stones, can also be counted as my Yang family and your Shuanghu Island Chen family. Make a good relationship." Saying that, the old man of Yang's face showed a kind smile. "So, thank you, senior. Fellow Taoist is polite." The old man of the Yang clan bowed his hands, and the two were in harmony. Negotiate the issue of Yang's shipping line's slave ship. By the time Chen Daoxian rushed back to Sangxiafeng City, it was almost evening. The loose cultivators surrounding the Hongyin Feijian store gradually dispersed. Obviously, today's lottery event has ended. Back to the shop. Chen Xianhe was cleaning up the lottery box and other sundries. Seeing Chen Daoxian, Chen Xianhe raised his head and said, "Is it done?" "Well, it's done. When I go to the Guang'an Prefecture slave market tomorrow to select the female slaves of Izumo, I will return to Shuanghu Island in 3 days at most." Hearing this, Chen Xianhe did not show reluctance, but heaved a sigh of relief. "It's good to go back early, and you can refine the magic weapon earlier." Seeing Chen Xianhe showing such a capitalist face, Chen Daoxian couldn't help twitching his mouth, silently stepped forward to help him clean up the sundries and stop talking. Just when Chen Daoxian and the two finished packing up the sundries and were about to close the door, a figure broke into the store. Chen Xianhe stepped forward without looking, and said with a cup of hands, "This distinguished guest, our shop is closed today. If you want to buy Feijian, please hurry up tomorrow." Chen Daoxian looked at the man who broke into the store. This man was about 40 years old with a rough face, wearing a linen blouse, and he seemed to be wrapped in something in his arms with a cautious look. As soon as Chen Xian's congratulatory words were finished, the man said in a loud voice, "I'm not here to buy magic weapons, but to sell treasures." Hearing this, Chen Xian's face sank. He has been in Sangxiafeng City in Guang'an Prefecture for so long, and he doesn't say that he encounters a liar like this who came to the store to deceive him every day, but it is no exaggeration to encounter him once every 2 or 3 days at the beginning. It's just that as he opened the store for a long time, these liars seemed to know that this store was not easy to cheat, and gradually stopped coming here. Unexpectedly, today he encountered such a liar again. Chen Xianhe immediately reprimanded, "Do you choose to go out by yourself? Or let me call the Zhou family's law enforcement team?" Hearing the Zhou family law enforcement team, the panic in the middle-aged man's eyes disappeared in a flash. Forget it, don't forget it. The treasure map that has been circulated in my immortal mansion can't be sold." The middle-aged man muttered in a low voice, turned around and wanted to leave. Slow. Hearing the words, "Shenju Immortal Mansion," Chen Daoxian moved slightly in his heart and stopped the other party. Chapter 52. Hearing this slow, the middle-aged man was about to step out of the threshold and retracted his footsteps. A hint of joy flashed in his eyes, but when he turned his head, his face was full of resentment, and he said, "Don't you want to find the Zhou family law enforcement team?" "Friend Taoist is polite, I don't know what to call you." Chen Daoxian completely ignored the other party's resentment and said with a smile, "My surname is Sunday, fellow Taoist son. The treasure map of Shenjue Immortal Mansion you just mentioned, I don't know what you mean?" Hearing this, the man surnamed Sun unconsciously tightened the treasure in his arms, but immediately thought of something, and then he gritted his teeth and took out the treasure in his arms. "It's this treasure." The man surnamed Sun took a residual picture out of his arms. "Can you show me?" Chen Daoxian stretched out his hand. Seeing that the middle-aged man had some scruples, Chen Daoxian smiled and said, "This is Guang'an Mansion. Are you still afraid that I will rob you?" Hearing this, the middle-aged man finally put down his guard and handed over the residual map. Really? As the middle-aged man said, what is drawn on this map is a nautical route map. However, only half of this nautical route map is left, and the other half seems to have been torn away, leaving only a residual map. Seeing this, Chen Daoxian shook his head. Let's not say that your treasure map of the immortal mansion is true or false. Just because it is only a residual map, it is enough to prove that this map is waste. After finishing speaking, Chen Daoxian threw the residual map directly to the other party. Hearing this, the middle-aged man became anxious. How can you call it waste? I bought it from Sanshofeng City with great difficulty. If I wasn't going to buy a magic weapon to go to the battlefield of Izumo, and I didn't have enough spirit stones, how could I sell this thing? The middle-aged man looked anxious. I'm confident that the other half of this picture is likely to be at a booth in the sanctuary market. Oh, why are you so sure? Chen Daoxian was interested. Fellow Taoist, please look at the tear in this picture. Isn't it very new? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian looked at the other side's finger. Indeed, the tear in the residual picture was obviously created recently. That is to say, there should be another residual picture not far from the middle-aged man who bought this residual picture. In the Sanxiafeng City, there are many kinds of sundries, and it is very likely that another residual picture is hidden in a booth in the Sanxiafeng City. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian said calmly, how much do you plan to sell? The middle-aged man raised a finger. 1,000. Walk slowly without sending. Chen Daoxian bowed his hands and said no more. Seeing his appearance, the middle-aged man became anxious and said, then how much are you going to pay? 10 spirit stones, puff. The middle-aged man's heart suddenly spurted out a mouthful of old blood, but thinking of the purpose of his trip, he hesitated a little. Add a little more, and I'll sell it. Just 10 spirit stones, whether you like to sell them or not. Chen Daoxian's attitude was firm. The middle-aged man's chest kept heaving and he was obviously not lightened by Chen Daoxian's qi, but in the end, he did not leave with anger, but threw the residual picture directly to Chen Daoxian saying, okay, 10 spirit stones are 10 spirit stones. Sloppy. Looking at the other party's appearance, Chen Daoxian still doesn't know that he has been fooled. Chen Xianhe didn't say a word by the side, quietly watched Chen Daoxian bargain with the other party, until the middle-aged man left with the spirit stone, and then laughed out loud. Ha ha ha. Chen Daoxian was a little embarrassed and cupped his hands. Uncle 13, don't make fun of me. Hearing this, Chen Xianhe said with a smile, you haven't been in the loose cultivation market for a long time. When you stay for a while, you will often encounter such liars. Today is a good thing for you, right? Chen Xianhe shook his head. After finishing speaking, he looked at the remnant picture in Chen Daoxian's hand and said with a smile, it looks quite similar, the treasure map of Shenjue Xianfu, huh? Just when he took over the treasure map in Chen Daoxian's hand, a golden light fell into his eyes. Chen Ziyan's face suddenly became serious. What's the matter, Uncle 13? Chen Xianhe raised his hand, carefully observed the residual image in his hand, and kept scanning with his divine sense, but he always found nothing. Am I reading it wrong? Chen Xianhe couldn't help but doubt himself, but he immediately shook his head. He must have read it right just now. There is indeed a golden light. As if thinking of something, Chen Xianhe turned to Chen Daoxian and said, go and close the door. Seeing the appearance of Uncle 13, Chen Daoxian knew that he must have found something, so he closed the door of the store and laid out a soundproof array. Daoxian, set it on fire. Remember, don't let the fire be too big. Although he didn't know what Chen Xianhe was going to do for Chen Daoxian, who was a master of fire control, Chen Ziyan's orders were simply a piece of cake. Soon, the gray residual picture gradually changed its appearance under Chen Daoxian's small fire. I saw that the old marks on the surface of the residual picture were burnt away bit by Chen Daoxian's precise fire control technique, leaving only a piece of gold foil less than half a millimeter thick. Put away fire control. The uncle and nephew looked at each other. Chen Xianhe grabbed the gold leaf in his hand and muttered, could it be that the treasure map is real? Chen Daoxian also immediately looked at the gold foil in Chen Ziyan's hand, and suddenly a feeling of pie falling from the sky came to his mind. Looking closely, Chen Daoxian found something wrong. Uncle 13, look, this gold leaf doesn't seem to be complete. Hearing this, Chen Xianhe looked at the gold foil carefully. Just as Chen Daoxian said, this gold foil is obviously missing a piece. Seeing this, Chen Xianhe breathed a sigh of relief. If this is a complete picture of the ruins of the immortal mansion, the value would be too terrifying. As we all know, the real Xinjue in those days was a fierce man who had caused the Wan Xinghai to be devastated for nearly 100 years by himself. How much wealth will there be in the cave he left behind? Chen Daoxian felt that there was nothing, and he had carefully understood the character of Xinjue Zhenren. In his opinion, this is a person with a lot of luck. After getting a big opportunity, he lost his mind and dared to rise up and rebel against the rule of Qianyuan Jianzong. Chen Daoxian didn't know how strong the Qianyuan sword sect was, but he knew that the entire Wangxinghai Jindan family had hundreds, and there were nearly 10 Yuanying families. But such a huge power of the Xiuxian family must submit to the rule of Qianyuan Jianzong. One can imagine how terrifying the strength of Qianyuan Jianzong is. Xinjue Zhenren was at most only in the late stage of Jindan, and he wanted to overthrow the reign of Qianyuan Jianzong like a madman. Chen Daoxian didn't believe how much wealth such an extremely expansive character could leave in his cave. Chen Xianhe sighed, handed over the gold foil and said, "Keep it. If there is a chance to find the other half of the gold foil in the future, it will also add a little background to the family." Chen Xianhe also reacted, "This well-known Xinjue real person. It is impossible to leave many treasures in his cave. Because Xinjue Zhenren is a loose cultivator, and loose cultivators usually put all their net worth in the storage bag they carry with them, and will never put them in any cave." Thinking about this level, Chen Xianhe showed a lack of interest in this so-called Xinjue Immortal Mansion. Chapter 53. Guang'an Prefecture, Sangxiafang City. Wuxia. The middle-aged man surnamed Sun came out of the Hongyin Feijian store, and he turned around and made sure that no one was following him, so he stopped in front of the Wuxia. He walked to a guest room and knocked on the door. Came back. As the door opened, a tall, thin, pale-faced middle-aged cultivator with a cultivation base of as high as the 9th level of qi refinement was sitting cross-legged on the warm jade futon in the guest room. The white-faced middle-aged cultivator raised his eyelids, looked at the rough-faced middle-aged man surnamed Sun, and asked. Came back. The middle-aged man surnamed Sun bowed his hands, replied, and said, "Brother, I have done everything you explained. The bait has been delivered, and I will wait for the fish to take the bait." Having said that, the man surnamed Sun narrated the scene just now. After narrating, he couldn't help complaining. "This Chan family brat is really stingy. It took me a lot of effort to make that treasure map, and he only gave me 10 spirit stones." With that said, the middle-aged man surnamed Sun took out the spirit stone. The white-faced middle-aged cultivator glanced at it and said with a smile, "It's okay, the bait has been cast, just wait for the fish to take the bait." Hearing this, the middle-aged man surnamed Sun looked like he was hesitant to speak. Seeing the doubts on his brother's face, the white-faced middle-aged man glanced at him and said, "You and I are brothers of the same mother. If you have something to say it clearly." Hearing this, the middle-aged man surnamed Sun bowed his hands and said, "Brother, I don't understand. Since we are going to rob this Chun family cub, why not just kill it halfway? Or simply sell the complete treasure map to what about the other party? You are acting too recklessly. Otherwise, why would we hide from Zhangzhou City to this Guang'an mansion?" The white-faced middle-aged man shook his head. The Lingshu battleship of the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture has been patrolling the safe waterway in the sea to ensure the safety of passing merchant ships. Although we can intercept them halfway, we will encounter uncontrollable risks. We are seeking money, not life. After a pause, he continued to explain, "As for what you said, sell the complete treasure map directly to the other party." Speaking of this, the white-faced middle-aged man laughed. "You know what? Almost everyone in the world thinks they are smart people. Do you know what the biggest weakness of smart people is?" The man surnamed Sun shook his head blankly. "I don't know. The biggest shortcoming of smart people is that they only believe what they see with their own eyes and what they think. Smart people are naturally vigilant about things like falling pie in the sky, and what I have to do next is to eliminate them. Vigilance." The white-faced middle-aged man talked eloquently. "Brother, I don't understand this. Anyway, I will do what you say." The middle-aged man surnamed Sun said with a simple and honest look. Seeing this, the white-faced monk smiled and shook his head. Guang'an Prefecture, slave market. Chan Daoxian and his family were wandering in this huge slave market, and beside him was a slave trader who was at the 7th level of qi refining. Treasurer, will the female slaves from the Izumo country here have resentment towards the master's family after buying it back? This is what Chan Daoxian is most worried about. He needs a woman from Izumo to reproduce for his Chan family, instead of looking for a group of enemies to go back. Otherwise, under the influence of this group of hating the Chan family's mother, the descendants of the Chan family will also hate the family when they grow up. This is not the development of the family, but the root cause of the family. Hearing this, the shopkeeper of the slave firm kept shaking his head and said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist-chan, don't worry about this matter. If our firm can't even solve this trivial matter, why are we still running this business? The major immortal clans in Shanghai demolished the store." He paused. "For each female slave for sale in the business, we let the monks cast spells on the female slaves to ensure that they forget their grievances against me, Wan Shanghai. Of course, if you buy female slaves back and abuse them, then our firm can't guarantee whether they hate you or not." Hearing this explanation, Chan Daoxian was slightly relieved. Sure enough, as he guessed, the problems he could think of, the major immortal clans in Wan Shanghai would not be surprised. Since they dare to buy female slaves from the Izumo country and go back to breed their descendants, it proves that buying female slaves from the Izumo country will not have any legacy. Thinking of this, Chan Daoxian smiled bitterly. "The slaves of your firm are good, but the price is high." "Young Daoist-chan is joking," the shopkeeper of the slave merchant said with a smile. "Now the latest batch of slaves from the Izumo kingdom battlefield has not been delivered, so the price of slaves has increased slightly. Besides, these female slaves you want are all of the highest grade here. All of them are young female slaves under the age of 20, with good looks, and a spirit stone is really not expensive." Saying that, the shopkeeper continued to sell. "We also have cheap female slaves, but they are all old and degenerate, and their fertility is not good. You can only buy this kind of female slave home as a servant, and the price is 100 lower times." Seeing that the shopkeeper wanted to sell young and strong male slaves who could help the main family farm, Chan Daoxian shook his head. "Our Chan family only needs female slaves." "Row." The shopkeeper looked regretful at first, then nodded cheerfully. "We will transport all the 10,000 female slaves from the Izumo country you want on your slave ship within 3 days. Our firm guarantees that every female slave you buy is clean and healthy. Please rest assured, fellow Daoist-chan, of the reputation of our firm." Chan Daoxian was relieved at this point. If the female slaves he bought were buy one get one free, his slave business would have been dismantled long ago, and it would not have been operating in Guang'an for so long. After negotiating the purchase of female slaves from Izumo, paying the deposit to the slave trader, the next step is to wait for the slave trader to transport the female slaves to the slave ship. These things are naturally watched by the Chan family, and the 13th uncle Chan Xianhe is also watching over the Feijian store. In the past few days he, the young patriarch of the Chan family, has been completely at ease. When people are free they want to find something to do. Maybe it was because of the water spirit beads and the wind and thunder array that I bought in Sangxiafeng City last time. Maybe because of what the man surnamed Sun said yesterday who sold the treasure map of Shinju Immortal Mansion. Looking at the bustling scattered workshop market, Chan Daoxian was looking forward to it. Walk in the bustling Sangxiafeng City. Chan Daoxian was hanging out in front of one stall after another. I have to say that the last time he bought the 2 treasures, the Shui Lingzhu and the Wind and Thunder Array, he was completely lucky. Actually, in front of the scattered repair booth in the scattered repair market, the things sold are almost garbage. Either it was a broken magic weapon or a broken spirit talisman. Chan Daoxian even saw someone selling the discarded elixir, and he was not afraid of eating dead people. Having seen the treasures in Zhou's auction house in the core business district, the garbage here is really hard for Chan Daoxian to see. He didn't stop until he reached a booth set up by a 9th level qi refining cultivator. Looking at the dazzling array of sundries on the other side's booth, Chan Daoxian squatted down calmly and said, "Friend Daoist, how did you sell this thing?" Chapter 54. The stall owner in front of Chan Daoxian was a white-faced monk on the 9th level of qi refining. Hearing Chan Daoxian's question, the white-faced cultivator glanced at the amulet pointed by Chan Daoxian, raised his head, and said, with friendly eyes, "This spiritual amulet is called the Ice Talisman, and it is a first-rank high-grade spiritual amulet. When it is released at a critical moment, it can be turned into an ice wall about 10 feet thick to resist the enemy's attack." Hearing this, Chun Daoxian was a little moved. He pointed to the talisman and said, "Can I get started and take a look?" "Of course can." The white-faced monk made a gesture of invitation. Chun Daoxian picked up the amulet and observed it carefully. In the world of practice, there are two types of talismans according to the materials they are made of, namely paper talismans and jade talismans. The so-called paper talisman is that the monk grinds the special spiritual planting stem into paper, and then burns the spell on the talisman paper. The advantage of paper talismans is that the materials are cheap, and you can try to make them without the need for a cultivator's wealth. But the disadvantage is that due to the defects of the paper talisman material itself, the rank of the drawn talisman is generally not high. Moreover, because the paper talisman does not instill a lot of true energy, its preservation time is not long. Usually, except for low-level scattered cultivators, few cultivators use it in confrontation with the enemy. As for the second kind of spiritual talisman, the jade talisman, it is much more precious. Because there are different grades of spiritual jade for making jade talismans, there are first-order spiritual jades and fifth-order spiritual jades, so the produced spiritual talismans can generally cover all grades. In the cultivation world, the reason why scattered cultivators generally dare not provoke sect disciples or big family disciples is because they don't know whether the other party has a magical amulet that far exceeds their strength. If a chi refining cultivator holds a second-order magic talisman in his hand, it can be stimulated by a life and death crisis, and even a blow from a foundation-building cultivator can erupt. How could an ordinary chi cultivator survive this kind of attack? As for why the chi refining cultivator did not carry a higher-grade third-order magic talisman, the first was because the price of the third-order magic talisman was extremely high. Unless the chi refining cultivator had an amazing background, it was impossible to buy it. There is another reason, that is, the power of the third-order spiritual talisman is huge, and the consciousness of the chi refining monk is too weak. Although the talisman does not need to be activated by the monk with his own strength, it must be controlled by the divine sense. And with the strength of the spiritual consciousness of the chi refining cultivator, the maximum range covered by the spiritual consciousness is estimated to be less than the attack range of the third-order magic talisman. This is not attacking the enemy but suicide. And at this moment, the talisman in Chen Daoxuan's hand is a talisman made of a first-order spiritual jade, that is, a jade talisman. After checking it carefully, Chun Daoxian found that this talisman was well preserved and was a rare boutique. Thinking of this, he raised his head and asked, "Fellow Taoist, do you know the price of this talisman?" 100 spirit stones. The white-faced monk smiled and stretched out a finger. Hearing this, Chun Daoxian shook his head. 100 spirit stones are almost enough to buy a first-order mid-grade flying sword. It's too expensive. Fellow Taoist, you can't say that. Although 100 spirit stones can buy a first-order mid-grade flying sword, where can you buy a high-quality flying sword in this scattered repair shop? The white-faced cultivator continued, "Besides, at a critical moment, my talisman can block at least 3 attacks from the late-stage chi refining cultivator who manipulated the first-order high-grade magic weapon. You should know that defensive magic weapons are far more expensive than attacking magic weapons, and the same is true for magic charms." Seeing Chun Daoxian still looking hesitant, the white-faced cultivator made a look of pity. "Forget it. Let's take a look at these treasures of mine and pick 3 random ones for you, how about it?" Hearing this, Chun Daoxian looked at the baby pointed by the white-faced cultivator, shook his head and said, "You." Before Chun Daoxian could speak, the white-faced cultivator slapped the storage bag, and all the messy things were poured out. Suddenly, a familiar remnant picture came into Chun Daoxuan's eyes, making his heart skip a beat. "All the things on my body are here. Although these are not worth much, the 3 pieces together are more than 20 spirit stones. If it still doesn't work, then forget it," the white-faced cultivator said, waved his hand with a look of regret, and was about to put away the debris on the ground. Chun Daoxuan's face was tangled. After hesitating for a long time, he finally said, "Okay, 100 spirit stones are 100 spirit stones." After all, Chun Daoxian took out 100 spirit stones from the storage bag, and then put the ice talisman into the storage bag very preciously. After doing all this, he looked at the pile of debris on the ground with disgust, picked 3 pieces and said, "Okay, that's all. The money and the goods are over, Daoist friends leave." The white-faced cultivator watched Chen Daoxian take these 3 pieces of sundry into his pocket. As if he had made a business, his face was very happy. 3 days later, 10 slave ships loaded with supplies and female slaves from Izumo slowly sailed from the port of Guang'an to the sea. The fleet of 10 slave-carrying ships seems to be very large, but in the port of Guang'an Prefecture, which is full of ships, it looks like a few tiny ants. Standing on the deck of the slave ship named Songyun, Chen Daoxian glanced back at Guang'an Mansion and silently bid farewell to Uncle 13. Guang'an Ferry Terminal. Uncle 13 looked at the fleet of slave ships that were gradually blurring in the distance, sighed, and silently turned back to Sangxiafang City. As the fleet entered the vast Wuxia waters and looked at the boundless sea, Chen Daoxian's heart suddenly opened up, because he knew that in front of him, there was a clan waiting for him to build, and there was a group of clansmen waiting for him to lead. Thinking of this, the sad parting feeling in Chen Daoxian's heart was thrown aside, and his whole body was full of energy. Return to Shuanghu Island, produce flying swords, cultivate spiritual veins, expand family population, and cultivate family monks. Countless things are waiting for him. How can Chen Daoxian be decadent? Half a month later, a deserted island in the southwest waters of Wuxia. In an artificially excavated cave, 2 chi-refining cultivators were silently waiting for the fish to take the bait. In this cave mansion, there are a total of 3 killing formations, which are enough to wipe out the bones of any chi cultivator who sets foot here. "Brother, why hasn't the Chen family been here yet? It's been half a month." The rough middle-aged man surnamed Sun seemed to be very impatient and said irritably. The white-faced cultivator was quite calm, and said indifferently, "Wait." 7 days later, the 2 monks flew out of the cave on the deserted island in dismay. "Brother, do you think the Chen family has discovered our plan?" Hearing this, the white-faced cultivator carefully recalled how Chen Daoxian looked when he picked up the remnant picture that day, shook his head and said, "No, he can't possibly find out." "Then why? The rough man has such a big temptation that I don't know how to describe it. Why is the other party not moved?" Hearing his brother's question, the white-faced cultivator shook his head, and he was very puzzled. In the end he smiled freely. "Interesting, really interesting, this Chen family boy is not greedy." "What?" The rough man didn't understand. "I mean, he is actually not greedy in the face of such a big temptation of Shinjua Immortal Mansion, which shows that his scheming is mature and stable, and he doesn't look like a teenager at all." "Is he as powerful as you say?" The rough man thought about what Chen Daoxian looked like that day when he was deceived by him, and he couldn't believe it. The white-faced monk shook his head and stopped explaining. "Forget it, you and I don't have to provoke this kind of enemy." He thought for a while. "I plan to wait for you to break through the 7th level of chi refining, and then take you to the battlefield of Izumo. With the savings you and I have accumulated over the years and the military exploits in the Izumo Kingdom, it is enough for you and me to break through to the foundation establishment stage. When the 2 of us break through to the foundation building stage, you and I will go to that place to explore together." Hearing that place, the rough man's face flushed with excitement. He cupped his hands and said with red eyes, "Big brother, it's all my fault for my poor aptitude. I've affected you all these years. You and my brother, what are you doing with these foreign words?" The white-faced monk patted the rough man on the shoulder. The other side. If Chen Daoxian knew that someone's evaluation of him was not age-appropriate and cautious, he didn't know how he should feel. The reason why he didn't go to explore any immortal mansion was because he didn't have the time to spare. Compared with the development of the family, compared with the huge dividends brought by industrialization, what is a mere immortal mansion? Chapter 55. Close to Shuanghu Island Port. In the cabin of the Zongyun, Chen Daoxian sat cross-legged. At this moment, the cabin he was in was like the sky and the ground compared to the Zonglong cargo ship left in Guang'an. Although the Zongyun is a slave ship, it can also be used to transport materials, but it is not as convenient as the Zonglong. But in terms of cabin comfort, the Zongyun had to shake off the Zonglong a few streets away. To make an analogy, it is the gap between luxury cruise ships and large freighters. Inside the cabin, in front of Chun Daoxian, a snow-white flying sword was constantly circling and dancing, and the sword light was constantly scattered in the entire cabin like a drizzle. If a cultivator accidentally stepped into it, even a 9th-level chi-refining cultivator would probably be torn to shreds by the drizzling sword chi. Half an hour. Chun Daoxian opened his eyes. After more than 2 months, I finally cultivated this rainbow sword art to the perfect state. Chun Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief and immediately frowned. This rainbow sword art and wind-chasing sword art are completely different. If wind-chasing sword art only greatly increases the speed and power of Feijian, then covering rain sword art greatly increases the strangeness of Feijian's attack. As for the increase of Feijian power, it is not as sharp as wind-chasing sword art. But Chun Daoxian lowered his head and glanced at the flying snow sword in his hand. My flying snow sword is a water-type flying sword, which is more compatible with this rain-covering sword art, and its overall power is also greater. Thinking that his strength has gone further, Chun Daoxian felt a little happy in his heart. In addition to the pursuit of longevity, the other major goal of monks is to pursue their own powerful strength. It is said, there are extreme monks in Xianyuns who, in order to gain strong strength, they even practice some evil ways that consume their own life essence in blood. According to the records of these 2 jade slips, the sword of chasing the wind and the sword of covering the rain should be 2 parts of a set of swords, and the complete sword should be called the sword of chasing the wind and covering the rain. I just don't know what it means. Thinking of this, the clueless Chun Daoxian shook his head. Forget it, don't want too much. It only took more than 4 months before and after, and the 2 first-order swordsmanships, wind-chasing sword art and rain-covering sword art, were continuously cultivated to a perfect state. It is unclear whether Chun Daoxian will come later, but he is sure that this is definitely an unprecedented feat, at least in the history of Qianyuan Jianzong. He, Chun Daoxian, is the only one. After completing today's practice, Chun Daoxian stood up from the futon, walked to an office desk and sat down. Counting the time, it's almost time to reach Shuanghu Island. Chun Daoxian planned to make a simple statistics on the accounts of the Guang'an house of this trip. After thinking about it, Chun Daoxian simply decided to sort out the entire family property. There are too few people available in the family nowadays, and there are many things that he cannot leave to ordinary people to take care of. For example, the Feijian shops in Sangxiafeng city of Guang'an Prefecture are non-ethnic industries. Currently, the real estate owned by my Chun family includes 1 Shuanghu Island, 1 Lingyan, 1 Laodi Fire Room, 1 Feijian factory, and a shop in Sangxiafeng City, Guang'an Prefecture. In addition to real estate, the family originally owned 66,692 spirit stones in working capital. Among them, 64,000 spirit stones were obtained from the transaction with the Mare people. 2,250 spirit stones were the total revenue of the Hongyin Feijian store during this period, and more than 400 spirit stones were the original funds of the family. However, the materials purchased by the family this time are also relatively large. Chun Daoxian couldn't help but feel a little distressed. I didn't feel it when I spent the money at the time, but now that I'm counting the money I feel a little distressed. This time I went to Guang'an Prefecture to purchase 10 slave ships, cost 10,000 spirit stones, buy 10,000 female slaves from Izumo, spend 10,000 spirit stones, buy a set of Yunling Great Array, spend 1,500 spirit stones, buy Dragon Python Swallowing Heaven. It costs 1,000 spirit stones to purchase the spiritual root test instrument, which costs 1,000 spirit stones, as well as the ice talisman and the map of the immortal mansion, which costs 110 spirit stones. These cost a total of 23,610 spirit stones. The rest is the biggest cost of this trip, the copper ore and mysterious iron ore purchased at Wu's Treasure Pavilion. This time, a total of 40,000 spirit stones were consumed in Wu's Treasure Pavilion for the purchase of spirit ore materials, including more than 12,800 caddies of copper ore and more than 1,280 caddies of black iron ore. Compared with the last purchased spirit ore materials, this time it is more than 10 times more. In all, unless the Feijian factory's production capacity is expanded, it will be enough for the Feijian factory to produce for 1 year. Thinking of these spiritual or materials, Chun Daoxian's heartache suddenly improved. The remaining 3,082 spirit stones, After deducting the food and other materials purchased for ordinary people, there are still 2,000 spirit stones left. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but take a deep breath and murmured, "The more than 60,000 spirit stones are gone? No wonder Uncle 13 called me a prodigal, and I wanted to slap myself." Of course he said that, and if he gave him another chance he might not even be able to keep the last 2,000 spirit stones, so he just spent it all. Because Chen Daoxian, who is a traveler, knows that money is a resource used to flow, and more than 60,000 spiritual stones are piled up in the family library without flow, and they are useless except for their good looks. Compared to those companies with high debt development in the previous life, he is already conservative enough. 3 days later, 10 huge slave ships slowly docked at the port of Shuanghu Island. During the more than 2 months that Chen Daoxian left, Chen Beiwang has not been idle. The whole craftsman who will make chow is busy with his feet. This means that everyone in the Chen clan practiced martial arts, and the minimum cultivation level was the acquired realm. Otherwise such high-intensity labor would have been exhausted by ordinary people. Got off the boat, Chen Daoxian found that Chen Ji had brought almost all the young men of the entire clan. From everyone's expressions, Chen Daoxian can only use one word to describe it. Of course, the target that everyone is most concerned about is not his young patriarch, but the young and beautiful girls he brought back 10 slave ships. Cough cough. Chen Daoxian Yufeng flew to the county magistrate Chen Ji, coughed softly, and then everyone reacted and bowed to Chen Daoxian. "See you the young patriarch." Okay. Chen Daoxian knew that everyone's mind was not here. He waved his hand and said, "Where's Chen Gongchao?" Because Chen Beiwang was responsible for the construction of the Feijian factory, he has been officially appointed as the general of Chongping County, and he is in charge of all construction matters in the Chen clan. Some are similar to the ancient Minister of Industry. Young patriarch, Chen Gongchao is still busy in the newly built residential area in Chongping County. There were so many people all of a sudden, and the young people in the clan were in high spirits. It took more than 2 months to complete the expansion of the new residential area. Chen Gongchao was busy with some finishing work, so he couldn't come to meet the young patriarch. Please don't blame the young patriarch. Chen Ji cupped his hands and said sincerely. Hearing that Chen Beiwang was still busy at the moment, Chen Daoxian sighed in his heart. How can I blame him for such a respectable elder? Hearing this sentence, Chen Ji's heart trembled. For a long time mortals have lived under the wings of immortals. In this world, how could immortals ever face mortals? Only their young patriarch really saw the efforts of mortals in his eyes and kept them in his heart. At this point in Chen Ji's heart, the young patriarch surpassed all the past patriarchs of the Chen family. Chapter 56. Twin Lakes Island Port. Along with the young and beautiful female slaves on the slave ship, there was a long queue to disembark one by one. The men of the Chen family burst into cheers, and the warm atmosphere seemed to overturn the entire island. The young female slaves of the Izumo country were all trembling when they saw this scene, and all their eyes showed fear and despair for the future. They don't know what the fate awaits them. A terrified little beast. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxian, who is a modern time traveler, has an uncomfortable feeling in his heart. But he knew that the Chen family wanted to expand the population in a short period of time, which was the best choice. Moreover, compared with those mortals who were slaughtered by the monk army, these Izumo women in front of them already had the best future. At least on Shuanghu Island, they will not be threatened with starvation and death, nor will they be humiliated by others. The only thing they have to do is to marry Chen's males to reproduce. Chenji, subordinates are here. Chen Ji hurriedly bowed. The order goes on until the women of the Iron Kingdom are calmed down. They are not allowed to harass them by Chen's males, and the job of settling them will be handed over to you. Don't let me down. At the end, Chen Daoxian gave him a warning look faintly. With Chen Ji's intelligence, he instantly understood the look in his eyes. It was Chen Daoxian warning him that county officials must not use their power to take advantage of these women. Young patriarch, don't worry. Your subordinates will definitely handle this matter well. That's good. Finally, looking at the cheering clansmen, Chen Daoxian flew towards Chen's Feijian factory. Watching Chen Daoxian leave, Chen Ji began to place these Izumo women. After all, with a population of more than 3,000 in the Chen family, It is not an easy task to resettle 10,000 women from Izumo. It is foreseeable that Chanji will be very busy in the future. Back to Shuanghu Island. For 10 days in a row, apart from his daily practice, Chen Daoxian did not immediately devote himself to the production of Feijian factory. Instead, they supervised Chanji and the others to place the women of Izumo. After all, Chen Daoxian still couldn't believe these hot-blooded Chen's men. Even under his supervision, there were still 1 or 2 incidents in which Chen's males took advantage of Izumo's women. For this kind of behavior, Chen Daoxian is naturally punished severely. After all, the purpose of buying these women was to let them reproduce for the Chen family on Shuanghu Island, not to vent their desires for the Chen family. In the future, these women will all be the mothers of the Chen clan. How could Chen Daoxian not protect them well? After all, protecting them is protecting the descendants of the Chen family, and its importance is self-evident. With the arrival of this 10,000 Izumo woman, the huge Shuanghu Island gradually became full of vitality. At this moment, if someone came to Shuanghu Island, I am afraid they would mistakenly think that they came to the daughter country. After the arrival of this batch of Izumo women, the ratio of males to females on Shuanghu Island has reached the most exaggerated 1:10 since the ancestor Chen Dengyuan established his family. Chen Daoxian had calculated that if all these women were assigned to Chen's male concubines, each Chen's male would probably marry more than 10 women. To be frank, if it wasn't for Chen Daoxian who embarked on the path of cultivation in this life, if he should not be distracted, he would be envious of the ordinary men in the clan. Chongping County Government Office. Chen Daoxian looked at the black group of Chen's children in front of him, turned to look at Chanji and asked, "Are these all my Chen's children under the age of 10? Young Patriarch, there are 1,039 children under the age of 10 in the Chen family. All of them are here." More than 1,000 children, standing in the square of the county government office, looked very crowded, almost sticking to each other. But at the moment the conditions are limited, and Chen Daoxian has no good venues to be picky about. This is already the most suitable venue to test the spiritual roots of Chen's children. When the Chen clan people learned that the young patriarch was going to test the spiritual roots of the entire Chen clan's children, they were even more excited than seeing 10,000 Izumo women. After all, so many Izumo women married into the Chen family, and the only ones who were happy were Chen's males. Chen's daughters didn't say anything, but they still had some opinions on Chen Daoxian, the young patriarch. Chen Daoxian resolutely chose to ignore the criticism of Chen's female relatives. For the Chen family to grow and develop, it depends on the sacrifices of generations of Chen clan members. This is the case with the monks of the Xianzi generation in Nangxianqing, the town of Battle Dead, and the same is true of the Chen family. But then Chen Daoxian's practice of testing the spiritual roots of the children in the clan completely dispelled the dissatisfaction of the Chen family's female relatives. Compared to a husband marrying a concubine, the future of his children is obviously more important. Besides, it is only natural for men in this world to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Chen's daughter-in-law has no reason to be dissatisfied. Sitting on the chair prepared by the county government, Chen Daoxian held the spirit measuring plate in one hand. After injecting a burst of infuriating energy, he aimed the spirit measuring plate at the child in front of him. No spiritual root next. After half an hour of testing, Chen Daoxian was basically numb. After testing hundreds of Chen's children, only a few immortal seedlings with spiritual roots were found, and all of them were immortal seedlings with spiritual roots. It is impossible for Chen Daoxian to say that he is not disappointed, but he knows that this is the status quo of the birth of spiritual root and aptitude immortal seedlings among mortals. Pick 1 in 100, and most of them are middle and lower spiritual roots. The next person who came to him was a timid little girl. Perhaps more than 100 Chen children were tested in a row, and none of them had spiritual roots. Chen Daoxian's face was not very good-looking, and the little girl was a little scared. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxian squeezed a smile on his face. "Don't be nervous." The little girl gathered her courage and nodded vigorously. In the next second, the spiritual light of the spirit detection disc enveloped the little girl. Chen Daoxian didn't care much in his heart at first, but he didn't expect the little girl in front of him to give him a great surprise. Shangling. Chen Daoxian looked at the little girl in surprise. At this moment, he took a serious look at the little girl's appearance. The girl is about 8 or 9 years old, her hair is withered, her face is a little pale, and she is wearing coarse clothes. It seems that her family is not very good. Seeing this, Chun Daoxian was afraid of scaring the little girl, so he tried to soften his voice and said, "Little sister, what's your name?" Seeing Chun Daoxian's attitude, the little girl secretly raised her head, then lowered her head quickly, and said timidly in a voice as thin as a mosquito, My name is Chun Lian. Chun Daolian, good name, ha? Chun Daoxian laughed out loud. Chun Lian didn't know why the young patriarch, who was told by his parents to be careful when he spoke, was so happy. But she knew it was a good thing for her. Chan Ji, who was standing beside him, and several of the Chan children who were detected to have a lower spiritual root were also looking at Chun Lian with envy at the moment. They know that the fate of this little girl will be completely changed from now on. Chun Lian, come here and sit next to me. Chun Daoxian waved to the little girl. Chun Lian courageously sat down on Chun Daoxian's spacious chair. Seeing her appearance, Chun Daoxian didn't care, and continued to detect the remaining children's spiritual roots. But hundreds of people have been tested in a row. Except for 1 middle spirit root and 3 lower spirit root immortal seedlings, there is not a single upper spirit root immortal seedling like Chun Lian. Chun Daoxian knew that this was the true birth probability of spiritual roots. With more than 3,000 people in the Chen family, he and Chun Lian have 2 spiritual roots. It is already very lucky. After all, there is less than 1/10 of the probability that Shang Lingzhen is in the cultivator group. Chapter 57. Took half a day. Since Chen Xianhe has been in charge of the Chun family for 50 years, the first large-scale screening of the Chun family's immortal seedlings has ended. Chongping County Government Office. Looking at the 8 children, the oldest 10 years old and the youngest 5 years old, Chun Daoxian was filled with emotion. In fact, he knew that there must be Xianmiao hidden in the adult group of the Chun family. But compared to these children under 10 years old, the cost-effectiveness of cultivating adult immortal seedlings is too low. Chun Daoxian decisively chose to give up. Chun Daolian, 8 of them, and Chun Daochu, who has been cultivating in Chen Daoxuan's cave, finally broke through the double digits, reaching as many as 11. Of course, if you want these 9 little guys to truly become monks in the Qi refining period, you have to establish a family spiritual vein. Otherwise, when they enter the Qi refining period and find that they do not have enough spiritual energy to practice, the fun will be great. For this, Chun Daoxian was quite confident. If nothing else, within half a year at the latest, the first spiritual vein of the Chun family can be cultivated. Chun Daoxuan's confidence still came from the transaction with the merman. It has to be said that the market of the merman is more than 100 times smaller than that of the large number of scattered cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture. But at the same time, selling a first-order low-grade flying sword to a loose cultivator, the Chun family can only earn a gross profit of 19 spirit stones, which is not counting the tax collected by the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture. However, trading with the merman can earn 419 spirit stones, and the profit is more than 20 times higher. Seems so. Although the merman market is not as huge as the Guang'anfu market, it is also a very important market for the Chun family. Especially for the current Chen family, the number of instruments required by the merman race is small and the profit is large, which is perfect for the Chun family. Copper Mountains. Chun Daoxian Cave Mansion. A group of 9 people, walking against the wind, slowly flew towards the direction of Dongfu. When everyone lowered their bodies, Chun Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. This was the first time he flew so many people with Yu Fengshu, but fortunately nothing went wrong. This is where you will be staying for the next few years. Chun Daoxian turned around and said to the group of children behind him, "It may be that the living environment is much worse than the previous life, and the children in this world are much more mature than the children of the same age in the previous life." Therefore, hearing this, even the youngest 5-year-old child did not cry. Seeing this, Chun Daoxian nodded in satisfaction. Perhaps he heard the movement outside the cave. A young figure rushed out of the cave with a long sword. It was Chun Daochu, who had not seen him for several months. Chun Daochu was stubborn, and when he saw Chun Daoxian, he was stunned for a moment, then immediately turned the tip of his sword down, and cupped his hands at Chun Daoxian. "See you, the young patriarch." Seeing Chun Daochu, Chun Daoxian said with a smile, "Daochu, you are here just in time. I will introduce a few clansmen to you. From now on, you will live together and learn to get along well, you know? Yes, young patriarch. The crowd looked at each other in dismay, and then answered in unison. Chen Daoxian nodded and asked them to introduce themselves. Everyone is the same age, even the oldest Chen Daoxian is actually only 6 years older than a 10-year-old child. After a brief introduction, everyone quickly became acquainted. Brother Daochu, listen to my father. You are the son of Director Chen, aren't you? Brother Daochu, how long have you been cultivating here? What is the life of an immortal like? Brother Daochu. Everyone is more in awe of Chen Daoxian and dare not disturb him easily, but when dealing with Chen Daochu of the same age, everyone has to be much closer. Chen Daochu took the trouble to explain the life in Qitong Mountain one by one to everyone. Finally, they had a certain understanding of the environment of the Red Copper Cave Mansion. Settled 8 immortal seedlings of the Chen family in the other courtyard of the cave mansion. Chen Daoxian stepped into his practice room. Call. In the past 10 days, first the female slaves of the Izumo kingdom were placed, and then the selection of Chen's immortal seedlings was organized, but Chen Daoxian was very tired. Back in the cave, Chen Daoxian just wanted to fall asleep on the bed. But the habit he had cultivated over the years still allowed him to drag his tired body to Ling in the practice room. Open the stone cover that closes the spiritual eye. A large amount of spiritual energy suddenly appeared out, but the keen Chen Daoxian still found that the spiritual energy that came out of this spiritual eye became less. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxuan's face sank. At that time, the monks of the immortal family found a total of 7 spiritual eyes in the Red Copper Mountains. This spiritual eye was the least used of them. Now it is time for the spiritual energy to gradually dry up. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian felt a little uncomfortable. After all, this spiritual eye has accompanied him for 11 years of cultivation life. It can be said that Chen Daoxuan's cultivation level today is all thanks to this spiritual eye. And now, this mouth is about to dry up. It's not that he is worried about not having spiritual energy to practice, but Chen Daoxian just feels that it is a little difficult to accept emotionally. He now finally understands the lonely look Chen Xianhe had when he heard that the copper veins were depleted. It is not the reluctance to give up on the exhaustion of the cultivation resources, but the emotion of the passing years. How can you see a rainbow without wind and rain? How can a figurine become a butterfly without breaking the cocoon? Chen Daoxian quickly adjusted his mentality, smiled slightly, and before he knew it, his heart became more determined. Take out a water spirit bead from the storage bag, and then take a qi gathering pill. After more than a month, Chen Daoxian once again felt the violent cultivation speed, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly. The next day, after silently reciting the Hongming Enlightenment Sutra, Chen Daoxian opened his eyes after finishing his overnight practice after storing a stardust in the sea of knowledge. Chen Daoxian smiled contentedly, feeling the infuriating qi in his dantian circling in the sea of qi that had grown a little. Seems to think of something. Chen Daoxian took out a jade slip from the storage bag. This jade slip is not something else. It is the body training method he bought at the Zhou family auction house in Guang'an Prefecture, Dragon Python Swallowing Heaven. More than a month after he got this exercise, Chen Daoxian had already fully understood this exercise with the help of the epiphany characteristics of the Hongming Enlightenment Classic. Speaking of which, the cultivation difficulty of this body training method is quite low. It's not even much higher than the practice Guiyuan Gong, which Chen Daoxian majored in. You must know that Guiyuan Gong, which Chen Daoxian majored in, is the most popular basic qi training method in Qinyuan Jianzong, and it is most suitable for disciples in the qi training period to lay the foundation. Although Guiyuan Gong does not have attribute bonuses, it is more peaceful and less difficult to practice. When the cultivator succeeds in establishing the foundation, no matter what kind of cultivation method he switches to, there will be no big hindrance. Therefore, this practice is the most widely circulated in Wangxinghai, and it is the most practiced practice by cultivators in the qi refining period. But now, Chen Daoxian discovered that this Dragon Mang Swallowing Heaven technique was actually as difficult to practice as Guiyuan Gong, which made him a bit of a treasure. According to the Dragon Python Swallowing Heaven exercise, the biggest consumption of this exercise is not spiritual energy, but various precious ingredients, such as monster meat, spiritual rice and spiritual fruit. Chan Daoxian looked at the introduction on this jade slip and felt a bit dumbfounded. Why do I think this is not a physical exercise, but a rice bucket exercise? I really deserve the word swallowing the sky. Chapter 58. Think of this. Chan Daoxian practiced the dragon python swallowing heaven technique again, and he had a hunch that he would be able to thoroughly learn this technique today. Really? With the operation of this body training method, Chan Daoxian's stomach and intestines began to move crazily, followed by a strong sense of hunger. The hunger was so fierce that it almost drowned his clear consciousness. Chan Daoxian has never felt such a strong sense of hunger since Chan Daoxian reached the qi refining stage and was able to fast. It seems that if you don't eat, you will starve to death in the next second. Fortunately, Chan Daoxian was already prepared, and saw that he immediately took out a fist-sized piece of roasted monster meat from the storage bag and chewed it. The flesh of the blood-spotted sea snake is fresh and tender, but after all, it has been stored in the storage bag for several months, and the taste is definitely not as fresh as when it was just hunted. But at the moment, Chan Daoxian, who had been hungry for a long time and his eyes fainted, couldn't care about the taste or taste. Piece by piece of monster roast meat was chewed by him roughly, and then he swallowed it. In less than a stick of incense, Chan Daoxian's small stomach pouch contained at least several hundred kilograms of blood-spotted sea snake barbecue. You must know that this is not ordinary poultry and livestock, it is monster meat, and the energy contained in its meat quality, let alone ordinary people, is difficult for qi cultivators to digest. However, Chan Daoxian ate so many kilograms of meat, and there was no other change except for a slight bulge in his stomach. Belch! After eating half a stick of incense again, Chan Daoxian hiccuped. He felt that he was finally unable to eat. Gollum! Gollum! In the practice room, a dull roar suddenly sounded like muffled thunder. Chan Daoxian knew that this was the sound of his stomach frantically digesting the barbecued blood-spotted sea snake. As the roasted meat of the monster in the stomach was digested little by little, a heat flow that was completely different from true qi flowed out of the stomach and quickly circulated throughout the body. Among them, the place where the heat flow gathers the most is the epidermis of his whole body. Chan Daoxian only felt that his skin was quenched little by this heat flow, and the strength of the skin was also enhanced visibly by the naked eye. Although the enhanced physical defense is completely incomparable with the magic weapon, if it can continue to be strengthened like this, Chan Daoxian believed that one day, he would be able to reach the level that the old man of the auction house said the body was hard against magic weapons. And Chan Daoxian discovered another benefit of body training. That is to increase the success probability of monks building foundations. As we all know, for monks to build foundations, in addition to foundation building pills, they also need at least second-order spiritual meridians to assist. The reason why these two resources are needed is because the cultivator will transform his true energy into true energy during the foundation building process. Compared with the meekness of the real qi in the sea of qi at ordinary times, when breaking through the foundation building stage, the transformation of the cultivator's real qi into the real essence will cause the qi sea to expand violently. At this time, whether the real essence is docile or not is particularly important. The function of the foundation establishment pill is to make the cultivator's transformed true essence become extremely docile, and directly overcome the difficulty of expanding the sea of qi. The second biggest difficulty in building a foundation is to fill the body with spiritual energy. Due to the transformation of true qi into true essence and the expansion of the qi sea, it is necessary to consume terrifying spiritual energy in a short period of time. At this time, unless it is a spiritual vein above the second rank, it cannot support the cultivator to break through. But at the same time, the spiritual energy infusion will bring another problem, that is, whether the cultivator's physical body can withstand the damage caused by the spiritual energy infusion. Some cultivators have clearly passed the difficulty of expanding the sea of qi, but they have fallen under the level of spiritual qi filling. This is the calamity brought about by the lack of physical strength of the monk. This is also the reason why the children of the big clan have to eat lingmi all year round. Lingmi has the effect of warming the body and enhancing the strength of the body. After eating for a long time, when the foundation is established in the future, it will not happen that the most dangerous transformation of the sea of qi will not happen, but it will fall on the body of spiritual energy. However, Cultivating the body training method obviously improves the cultivator's body more than long-term consumption of spiritual rice. Not only that, the improvement of the cultivator's physical body will even speed up the cultivator's cultivation speed to some extent. Because the total amount of spiritual energy a cultivator refines every day is fixed. If it exceeds this amount, it will cause damage to the cultivator's body. But what if the cultivator's physical strength is increased? At that time, the total amount of the cultivator's refining spiritual energy will definitely increase, and the speed of cultivation will also speed up. Of course, the premise of all this is based on the fact that the cultivator can withstand the consumption caused by body refining. Just now, Chen Daoxian swallowed hundreds of kilograms of monster beast roast meat in less than 2 incense sticks. You must know that when the blood-spotted sea snake was peeled and the bones were removed, and the inedible meat was removed, the remaining good meat added up to less than 2,000 caddies. Chen Daoxian killed 1/10 of it in an instant. According to the market price, he ate at least 10 spirit stones in a short while. This is just the time to practice 2 incense sticks. According to his cultivation speed with full firepower, he would eat at least 40 or 50 spirit stones a day. If you replace it with lingmi, it might be more expensive. This kind of cultivation method, which Cultivation Force can afford to play. Don't say anything about the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture. Qinyuan Jianzong can't stand this kind of consumption, right? After all, Qinyuan Jianzong has countless resources, but the number of disciples is also the highest in the Sea of Stars. In such a big sect, everyone eats like this, and even the largest family is poor. Think of this. Chen Daoxuan's original plan to let all the cultivators of the Chen family practice the body training method failed. He reckoned that in the future, only the children of the elite family would be allowed to practice physical exercises. As for the other monks of the ordinary family, the Chen family should not be able to support them. Shaking his head, Chen Daoxian no longer thought about it. Standing up, he stretched out, and the bones all over his body broke out with a crackling sound. Out of the cave, on the small square on the cliff, Chen Daoxian found that Chen Daochu had brought 8 other immortal seedlings of Taoist characters, and was practicing swordsmanship against the rising sun. Chen Daoxian watched silently without making a sound. Although only practiced for a few months, Chen Daochu has broken through to the 4th floor of the acquired day one after another, which shows that there is a huge gap between people with spiritual roots and ordinary mortals. This is still the case when Chen Daochu does not have enough cultivation resources. If the Chen family buys Tongmai pills for the spiritual root disciples in the clan, they can even open up the meridians of the whole body overnight, cross the mortal realm, and directly enter the qi refining period. The reason why Chen Daoxian did not do this was because the spiritual veins of the family had not been successfully cultivated, and even if everyone entered the qi refining period, there would not be enough spiritual qi to practice. It is better to study and practice now to hone your Xinqing. Chen Daolian, aren't you full? Are your hands shaking so badly? Chen Daochu saw that the long sword in Chen Daolian's hand was trembling and standing unsteadily, and he immediately put on the appearance of a little adult and scolded. Chen Daolian was very aggrieved when he said something, and tears rolled in her eyes, but she gritted her teeth and resisted it. What others can do, she can do too. Chen Daoxian watched from the side and nodded secretly in his heart. Chen Daolian looks timid, but she is soft on the outside and firm on the inside. This kind of character is very conducive to cultivation. After watching the crowd practice swordsmanship for a while, seeing that there was no major problem with what Chen Daochu taught, Chen Daoxian did not come out to say hello to everyone, and went straight to the direction of Feijian factory. Chapter 59. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 3 months have passed. In the southwest waters of Wuxia, the underwater magic monkey mountain is about 10,000 miles away from the Chen family on Shuanghu Island. As far as the eye can see, large groups of mermen are carving out caves all over this mountain range. Demon Mountains. Inside the most spacious cave, a sturdy male merman with bronze-colored muscles was quietly adjusting his breath in the cave. Looking at his disordered breath, it was obvious that he was seriously injured. "Father!" A petite figure suddenly broke into the cave, and the petite merman held a spirit medicine overflowing with spiritual energy in his hand, and said excitedly, "Look, Luo Air has found the medicine that can treat his father's injury. Hear the call. The patriarch of the Merman clan slowly opened his eyes, looked at the elixir in his daughter's hand, and there was a hint of distress in his eyes. Luor, I've worked hard for you during this time. Who knew? Luoli heard this. His little head kept shaking. Father, please don't say that. For the sake of your clan to have a safe place to live, you are willing to be injured and fight with the leader of the water demon ape. Compared to you, what does Luor do for such a small thing? Hearing Luoli mentioning the battle with the leader of the water demon ape, even though the battle had passed for almost half a year, the Merman clan chief still felt a little scared every time he thought about it. It was a little bit, just a little bit. He died with the leader of the water demon ape. Thinking of this, the head of the Merman clan said with relief, speaking of which, I was able to win the water demon ape leader. And it was all up to you and the clan to take the lead in defeating the water demon ape group and come to support me. Otherwise, I will have to die with that fellow. Hearing what his father said, Luoli felt a little embarrassed. I didn't expect that the difference in strength between people with weapons and without weapons would be so big. It seemed that he thought of the scene where the Merman clansmen were holding magic weapons, and they were in a state of power in the water demon ape clan. Luoli's little face flushed with excitement. Father, this time we are dealing with the Chun family on the Shuanghu Island. We must buy more weapons. Just do it. You and I thought about it together, the patriarch of the Merman clan said with a smile, but he seemed to think of something again, and his brows slightly wrinkled. However, I remember that there are not many spirit stones brought by the clan. Hearing this, Luoli's excitement couldn't help but stagnate. But he thought of something in a flash and said happily, it doesn't matter. Last time, the Chun family named Chan Daoxian gave me a picture book of various spiritual minerals and medicines. We can use these things above to exchange weapons with them. Hearing this, the patriarch of the Merman clan softened slightly. He instructed, Luoli, this transaction with the Chun family is very important, and we must not make any mistakes. Although we occupy the Magic Ape Mountain, our foothold is still uncertain. Plus I'm seriously injured now, so I can't help you at all. If you want to protect the clan, you can only strengthen the strength of the clan, and purchasing weapons for the clan is the fastest way to strengthen the strength. Father, Luoli will definitely handle this matter well. You can rest assured. Luoli smiled. Twin Lakes Island. Cave house in the Copper Mountains. Chan Daoxian opened his eyes again, his face full of surprise, and said, the 5th level of qi refining. Chan Daoxian felt very excited when he felt that his Dantian qi had grown by 30%. It took less than half a year to break through to the 4th level of qi refining, and then once again broke through to the 5th level of qi refining. This cultivation speed is not even slower than that of the most core disciples of the big family. Chan Daoxian knew. His cultivation speed is so fast, except for the water spirit beads and qi gathering pills to assist in his cultivation. The body refining effect of dragon python swallowing heaven is also indispensable. He could clearly feel that as his physical body became stronger and stronger, the total amount of aura refined every day was slowly increasing, which undoubtedly accelerated his cultivation speed. The only pity is that his blood-spotted sea snake meat has already been eaten, and after lack of body refining resources, the cultivation progress of dragon python swallowing heaven is horribly slow. Besides, recently, Chan Daoxian has clearly felt that the spiritual eyes of the practice room are no longer enough to support him to practice at such a high speed. The problem of insufficient spiritual energy was put in front of Chan Daoxian again. It has been 3 months since I returned to Shuanghu Island. Chan Daoxian didn't rest for a day, and the busy time every day was more terrifying than working overtime in the factory in his previous life. At least in the previous life I worked overtime and had time to sleep. And now Chan Daoxian is busy every day except for his daily practice. During the daytime he spent about 5 hours in the Feijian factory making red shadow flying swords. By evening, after he checked the work of Chan Ji and others, he returned to the cave to personally teach Chen's 8 immortal seedlings to practice, and it would take him another 2 or 3 hours. In addition, the 4 hours of practice every day are unstoppable. Every day is full of schedules and there is no gap. However, watching the family grow and grow little by little in his hands, this kind of satisfaction is also difficult for outsiders to understand. In addition to the stable daily Feijian production of Feijian factory, what excites Chan Daoxian the most during this period is that Chan Daochu is actually an immortal seedling of Shanglingen. Calculated this way, Although there are only 11 monks in the Chun family, they have 3 spiritual roots. I have to say, very lucky. Normally, if you want to give birth to 3 spiritual root cultivators, at least dozens of spiritual root cultivators are possible. The end of the night of practice. Chen Daoxian stood up and walked outside the cave. Out of the cave. Seeing that the 8 immortal seedlings of the Chun family were already practicing swordsmanship in the small square outside the cave, Chen Daoxian did not bother and flew directly towards Sequoia Island. That's right. He was absent from work today and did not go to the Feijian factory, because he had already contacted Luoli of the Mare people yesterday. Today is the day when he traded with the Mare people for the second time. The deal is significantly larger than the first rush transaction. Not only that, the last time Chen Daoxian handed over a picture book of rare treasures such as spirit mines, spirit medicines, etc. to the mermen, I think there should be a lot of unexpected gains this time. The worst thing is to ask the merman to buy a batch of water spirit beads. After so long with Shui Lingsu's auxiliary training, he felt that he could not do without this thing. After all, after feeling the charm of high-speed cultivation, who wants to return to the slow cultivation state of the past? Chen Daoxian estimated, if his cultivation resources such as water spirit beads and spirit pills remain abundant, he is sure to reach the 9th level of qi refining before the age of 20. Although compared with Zhou Mubai's 21-year-old foundation building, there is still a gap. But if this cultivation speed is put into the group of loose cultivators and the children of small families, it is estimated that it can scare others silly. Sequoia Island. Compared with the slightly more complex terrain such as Shuanghu Island plains, lakes and mountains, the pattern of Sequoia Island is much clearer. There is only a large plain and freshwater lakes, and the entire island seems to have not much scenery except for a large redwood forest. If such an island is placed on the earth, it must be a treasure island. The island is rich in land resources, rich in forest resources and abundant in freshwater resources, making it very suitable for human habitation. But in this world, if there is no spiritual vein, it is destined to become a deserted island. Chen Daoxian came to this island again. Look around. He flew towards the north side of the island. Chapter 60. All the way north. Chen Daoxian stopped over the reef group he traded last time. Looking at the endless sea, Chen Daoxian slowly lowered his body. I always trade standing with the mermen, but it seems a bit tense. Chen Daoxian said silently. Trading with the merman is a long-term business for the Chun family, and it is definitely not something that will be given up after 1 or 2 orders. Chen Daoxian also wanted to use the power of the merman to open the treasures of the underwater world of Wangxinghai. For the market of the merman, he will never give up no matter what. Since you don't want to give up, it is very important to have a good relationship with each other. Fortunately, during the last transaction, the merman had a good impression of him. In this transaction, there should be no more tit-for-tat scenes when we first met. Let's build a sea pavilion here. He glanced at the reef on the bottom of the sea, and the most prominent part had already extended to the sea, enough to be the foundation of the pavilion. Just do it. Chen Daoxian slapped the storage bag, took out the red shadow flying sword, and infused with true qi, the 3-foot-long sword light pierced out of his body. Brush. Under the control of divine consciousness, the red shadow flying sword slashed towards the reef on the bottom of the sea. Soon, a huge reef with a whole body like white jade was cut into 2 pieces by the red shadow flying sword. The fracture of the reef is as smooth as jade, and there is no trace of cutting at all. Chen Daoxian nodded with satisfaction, and continued to control the flying sword to continuously cut along the stone. Follow the ideas in your head. Chen Daoxian kept grinding the reef stone in front of him with his flying sword. After half an hour, a rough pavilion was built by Chen Daoxian, standing on the reef foundation on the sea. Seen from a distance, the pavilion seems to be floating on the sea surface. If you ignore its rough workmanship, it looks quite interesting. Step into the gazebo. Chen Daoxian looked around and felt that something was missing. He took out a piece of stone from the bottom of the sea again, and after several tossing, a stone table and 2 stone benches were made by him. Immediately, Chen Daoxian used a fire control technique to evaporate the water stains in the pavilion. Under the shroud of water vapor, this sea pavilion is like a fairyland in a dream. It always feels like it's almost meaningless. Chen Daoxian touched his chin and muttered. Immediately he soared into the air, flew around the pavilion a few times, and finally found something missing. I didn't give you a name. Chen Daoxian's eyes lit up slightly and smiled. With a burst of sword light flying, in the blink of an eye, the three characters Guanhai Pavilion appeared above the stone pavilion. It took him less than an hour from deciding to build the pavilion to the time it was built. This kind of work efficiency, even in the previous life, is extremely terrifying. But Chen Daoxian knew that this was the power of a monk. The strength of a monk is not only reflected in its powerful destructive power, but also in its powerful productivity. For example, spiritual fields that only monks can cultivate. If ordinary mortals were allowed to plant spiritual fields, even if they tried their best, they would not be able to plant even an acre of spiritual fields. Because Ling rice is different from ordinary rice. Its straw is extremely tough, and it requires a monk to hold a magic weapon to cut it, not to mention the more difficult work of peeling the shell. Therefore, even a group of monks has to study specifically to plant spiritual fields. Among the monks who can plant spiritual fields are called Lingzifu. Although this profession is not as popular as alchemists, tool refiners, magicians, and talismans. But in the group of loose cultivators, he is also considered a proper wealthy and handsome. The spiritual stones that Ling Zifu earned in 1 year were at least several times higher than those of a loose cultivator who knew nothing. Of course, in Guang'an Prefecture, since scattered cultivators basically do not have spiritual veins, even if they can cultivate spiritual fields, they can only be tenants for the cultivators. With the exploiting power of the Wan Xinghai cultivator clan, these Lingji husbands would not be able to earn a few lingshi throughout the year. This also led to a great decrease in the interest of loose cultivators in learning to plant spiritual fields. Late at night, waited for a full day. The mere people are long overdue. Really, this time Luoli came alone. As for the men she brought, they were all arranged by her in the reef group on the bottom of the sea. He didn't directly let a group of mercenary strong men surround Chen Daoxian as he did last time, trying to restrain him in his aura. Chen Daoxian, here I come. Luoli, who emerged from the sea, glanced strangely at the stone pavilion built by Chen Daoxian, and finally jumped up and sat on the stone deck. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxian was a little curious. His eyes couldn't help but look down at Luoli. Who knows, before he could see clearly, he was caught by the other party. I saw Luoli looked at him strangely, tilted his head and said, "What are you looking at?" Cough, it's nothing, Chen Daoxian covered up embarrassedly, and then said with a smile, "We meet again, Miss Luoli." Seeing him like this, Luoli murmured in her heart, but she didn't ask too much. Immediately thinking of something, she glanced at the pavilion, looked at Chen Daoxian and said, "You built this pavilion?" "Right." Chen Daoxian nodded. "It's ugly." Hearing this, Chen Daoxian showed an embarrassed but polite smile on his face. Seeing him like this, Luoli covered her mouth and laughed lightly. "However, you are very attentive. Naturally you have to be careful, after all. Your merman is a big customer of my Chen family," Chen Daoxian said with a smile. After a few polite words, Chen Daoxian stepped into the topic and said, "Miss Luo, I don't know how many flying swords you plan to buy this time?" Hearing Chen Daoxian talking about business affairs, Luoli also sat up nervously. "Of course, the more the merrier. The weapons you sold to us last time are very good, but the number is a little too small. This time we are going to buy more weapons." After a pause, she added, "We want as much as we want." Hearing these inhuman words, Chen Daoxian couldn't help being elated. "Indulge for a moment." Chen Daoxian patted the storage bag. I saw a mouthful of flying swords overflowing with inspiration, piled up in the pavilion, until it became a hill. Seeing the flying sword under her feet, Luoli's beautiful eyes overflowed with a small fortune fan who seemed greedy when she saw the gold ingot. She took a deep breath and said, "This time there are more flying swords than the last time." "That's right," Chen Daoxian nodded. "This time we have more time to prepare, plus sufficient materials. The number is indeed several times more than last time. There are a total of 350 flying swords here." Hearing this, Luoli's pretty face flashed a hint of embarrassment. "What's the matter? Is there something wrong with Miss Luo?" Chen Daoxian saw a strange expression on her face, and said with a concerned gesture. Luoli shook his head, and then said, "By the way, didn't you say last time that you can use spirit or to offset the bill? This time we may not have enough spirit stones. Let's see if we can use spirit ore to pay for it. At the end, Luo Li's voice became lower and lower. Chun Daoxuan's heart sank when he heard this. This time, he also counted on quickly earning enough 100,000 spirit stones from the merman, and returning to Shuanghu Island to cultivate spirit veins. Unexpectedly, things seemed to have taken a new turn. Thinking of this, he said calmly, I wonder how many spirit stones Miss Luo can take out this time. Chapter 61. Hurt. Luo Li first stretched out a small white and tender hand, and then stretched out another, carefully saying, a little more than 100,000 spirit stones. Hear this. Chun Daoxian heaved a sigh of relief. Enough. There are 100,000 spirit stones. There are still 2,000 spirit stones in the Chun family's treasury, and these 100,000 spirit stones are enough to cultivate a spirit vein for the Chun family. Thinking of this, Chun Daoxian said in a relaxed tone, of course there is no problem. I don't know what kind of spiritual ore Miss Luo brought. Seeing that Chun Daoxian was not angry, he looked kind and easy to talk. Luo Li was even more fond of him in her heart, but she felt a little embarrassed. I saw her lips parted lightly, and a melodious song came out of her small mouth. Soon, one after another, the mermen emerged from the sea, and they were the men brought by Luo Li. Like last time, these mermen were all holding huge white shells. Inside the white shells are spirit stones, spirit mines, spirit beads, and other rare and precious treasures. Luo Li turned her back and clapped her hands to the clansmen in the sea. The mermen lined up in a row and opened the white giant shells in their hands together. In the next second, the sea surface was filled with light, dazzling people's eyes. Looking at these spirit stones and spirit mines in front of him, Chun Daoxian only felt his blood surging all over his body, and his face flushed slightly. Seeing his unpromising appearance, Luo Li's pretty face couldn't help showing a hint of smugness, and she finally didn't have to feel ashamed for her just gaffe. Thinking of this, Luo Li happily introduced, this is the Guishui fine gold you mentioned last time. It is this kind of stone that our people have mined the most during this time. Chun Daoxian looked in the direction of Luo Li's finger. The Guishui concentrate gold mines the size of an adult's fist are piled up in the white giant shells, exuding an amazing aura. On the side, Luo Li continued to introduce, this is another kind of stone we found on the bottom of the sea. Red copper mine. For Chun Daoxian, who owned red copper ore veins in his family, he was familiar with this kind of spiritual ore. As a first-order spiritual ore, copper ore is widely distributed in Wangxinghai and Xianyunzhu, second only to mysterious ore such as black iron ore. Chun Daoxian is not too surprised that there is such a spiritual mine on the bottom of the sea. Yes, it's copper ore. Luo Li nodded, this kind of copper ore is the raw material for your weapons, right? Even though the mermen don't know how to refine tools, they still have the ability to distinguish auras. After all, they also possess spiritual consciousness. Yes. Chun Daoxian nodded unabashedly. For his sincere attitude, Luo Li nodded with satisfaction and said, since this kind of stone is the raw material for your weapons, the price should be high. Tell me, how much should it be worth? Luo Li immediately put on the appearance of a little money fan. Chun Daoxian frowned and said, in Guang'an Prefecture, the price of red copper ore is 3 spirit stones per pound. What price do you think is appropriate to sell it to me? What? Hearing the price, Luo Li was a little dumbfounded. How could this be? Guishui Jingjin Mingming can change a weapon with just a few pieces. Why is this stone so cheap? The price difference between the two is dozens of times. This made Luo Li wonder if Chun Daoxian was deceiving himself. Seeing that Luo Li didn't speak, Chun Daoxian coughed and explained, Miss Luo Li, do you know how difficult it is for our human race to refine a weapon? As he said that, he sighed. Let's just say that the lowest level, the first-order low-grade flying sword, also requires me, a cultivator who is proficient in refining, to spend a full 7 days to complete it. Your merman mining shouldn't be so hard, right? What? Hearing that it takes 7 days to refine a weapon, Luo Li was at a loss for words. It's too hard work. In this way, it is much easier for their clan to mine. Thinking of this, Luo Li felt a little embarrassed. After all, she also knows that digging stones is not technical, but a labor of strength. And male sharks are not like female sharks, they can also raise spirit shells. Male sharks can't do anything, and they only have stupid strength. In this way, their mermen can exchange for the weapons of the Chun family with just a little effort, which is a huge profit. Seeing the shame on Luo Li's face, Chun Daoxian heaved a sigh of relief. It's so dangerous, this girl is actually enlightened. He just deliberately ignored the value of the spirit ore itself, and shifted the perspective of value to the labor that both parties paid. It can be said that it is a sophistry. Fortunately, Luo Li didn't find anything wrong. Perhaps in Luo Li's eyes, this broken stone had no value at all. The spiritual beads produced by the scallops they raised could decorate the cave anyway. What's the use of this broken stone? Can't be eaten or used and it looks ugly. If it wasn't for Chun Daoxuan's request for these broken stones, the merman would not have paid attention to them at all. As if feeling guilty for suspecting Chun Daoxian just now, Luo Li's next tone softened a bit. This is the biggest specialty of our merman tribe, water spirit beads. Luo Li pointed at the water spirit beads held in the hands of the clan, and her tone suddenly became sad. Chun Daoxian knew that the Mer people were persecuted by the Zhou family for hundreds of years because of this water spirit pearl. For this matter, Chun Daoxian is not easy to persuade. After all, he and the Zhou family belong to the same human race. It was quite reasonable for Luo Li not to hate Wu Jiwu and hate him. I don't know how much this water spirit orb can be worth. Luo Li raised her head and looked at Chun Daoxian. After pondering for a while, Chun Daoxian looked at Luo Li's wink and said carefully, "The price of the first order water spirit beads in Guang'an Mansion is 50 spirit stones. I wonder what price Miss Luo is willing to give me?" He said 50 spirit stones, and Luo Li definitely couldn't give a price higher than that. In fact, although the water spirit beads sold by the Zhou family are 50 spirit stones, there is no way for ordinary scattered cultivators and children of small families to buy them. This kind of treasure to assist cultivation has long been determined by the big families of Guang'an Prefecture, and even other provinces in Songzhou. Even if a little bit of scraps fell into the hands of a loose cultivator, they would often sell for a high price. For example, the last time Chun Daoxian was in Sangxiafang City, he spent twice the premium to buy a few water spirit beads. And when Luo Li heard that 10 water spirit beads can be exchanged for one weapon, she couldn't help but feel uneasy about the terrifying price. She hesitated, unable to speak for a long time. In fact, she really wanted to talk about selling 50 spirit stones, but after hearing that Chun Daoxian worked hard for 7 days to create a weapon, and their merman could exchange only 10 spirit beads for it, and Luo Li was very disturbed by the condemnation in conscience. A long time, Luo Li, who was struggling in her heart, raised her head and said solemnly, "Chun Daoxian, you are a conscientious person. Since your Chun family treats my mercenary family sincerely, we can't make money from you without our conscience. This water spirit pearl, we sell you 110 spirit stone." Hearing this price, Chun Daoxian almost didn't sit still and fell off the stone bench. Chapter 62. Chun Daoxian knew that he seemed to be fooling this silly girl. Seeing the sincere look on Luo Liqiu's face, Chun Daoxian couldn't help feeling a little guilty. But soon the guilt was thrown away by him. He glanced at Luo Li, and then at the large number of rare and precious treasures brought by the Mer people, and a bolder idea emerged in his heart. Chun Daoxuan's thoughts floated in his heart, but his face remained calm. "Miss Luo, I feel the sincerity of your Mer people, but 10 spirit stones and a water spirit pearl, will it be 2? Before Chun Daoxian finished speaking, Luo Li's pretty face flashed a blush and she stammered, "I know that the Shirling stone is a bit expensive, but it's cheaper than the Zhou families, right? Such as, if you still think it's expensive, we can still discuss it." "Okay. No need to discuss, let's set this price." Chun Daoxian waved his hand. He felt that he couldn't talk to Luo Li any longer, and if we talked again, it was estimated that the price could be reduced to 1 spirit stone. Although the Chun family needs to accumulate primitive capital, they can't cheat the Mer people like this. After all, he already regards the Mer people as his ban. Hearing that Chun Daoxian agreed to the price, Luo Li breathed a sigh of relief. For so many years, due to the persecution of the Zhou family, the Mer people have never dared to deal with the human race, and the little information about the human race was passed down by word of mouth from the ancestors in the clan. It's not that Luo Li didn't know that Chun Daoxian made a lot of profits in the transaction between the two parties, but at the same time, They also obtained the weapons they wanted in the transaction with Chen Daoxian. In Luo Li's view, the transaction between the two parties is a win-win situation. After negotiating the pricing of several kinds of spirit ores and water spirit beads, Chen Daoxian said, "Since the price has been negotiated, let's trade?" "Okay." Luo Li showed two little tiger teeth and nodded with a smile. "This time we brought a total of 101,756 spirit stones, as well as various spirit minerals and spirit beads, worth about 170,000 spirit stones. That is to say, the total value of your goods is 271,756 spirit stones." "Yes." Luo Li nodded. Chen Daoxian continued, "I brought a total of 350 flying swords here. According to the price we negotiated for 500 spirit stones, a total of 175,000 spirit stones need to be paid." Hearing this, Luo Li was a little embarrassed. It seemed that she brought too much, and Chen Daoxian couldn't eat it. When she was in a dilemma, Chen Daoxian's mind moved slightly and said with a smile, "Miss Luo, although we are trading for the second time, I wonder what your impression of me is?" Hearing this, Luo Li was stunned at first. Then her pretty face turned slightly red, and she turned her head and said, "Not bad. My impression and credibility of Miss Luo and the merman are also very good." He paused. "So I think the transaction between our two sides can continue and expand." "Expand?" "Yes, expand." Looking at Luo Li's ignorant appearance, Chen Daoxian continued to explain, "For example, there are many resources that our human race can use in the deep sea, but your mere human race can't use it. For example, the spiritual ore is one of them. And my human race also has a lot of things that your mermaid race desperately needs, such as magic tools. Therefore, I think it is better for the two of us to discuss what the other party has announced." Hearing this, Luo Li was silent. A long time. She raised her head and said, "Our mere people are short of food." "What?" Chen Daoxian was almost confused by Luo Li's words. After the cultivator embarked on the path of qi refining, he basically stopped eating. The lowest level of the merman race is the first order early stage, which is equivalent to the early stage of human qi refining. How can they be short of food? Seems to see Chen Daoxian's doubts. Luo Li slowly explained, "Our merman is different from your human cultivation methods. Speaking of which, our cultivation methods are more like ancient monks." Ancient monk. Hearing this word, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but suddenly realized. Ancient monks refer to the group of monks in ancient times. In the cultivation world, it does not mean that the current monks are inferior to the ancient monks. It can only be said that the paths taken by the two sides are somewhat different. Ancient monks usually practice qi and body refining at the same time, but the monks in the ancient times had a characteristic, that is, they did not have magic weapons. The ancient monks started out by imitating the path of cultivation followed by monsters. At that time, the human race was not the overlord of this world. Among the 10,000 races, people can only be said to be a not-so-small race. But with the emergence of the cultivator group, the human race quickly grew into the largest race in the world with its terrifying ability to reproduce. Later, he became the overlord of this world. Other aliens and monsters either hid in the deep mountains and forests far away from the human race, or hid in the deep seabed and did not dare to show their faces. With the continuous development of the human cultivation world, the cultivation system has also begun to change. Especially with the appearance of defensive instruments, the human race found that it did not take a lot of energy and resources to refine the body, and the human race monks could also obtain terrifying defense power. By this period, bodybuilding exercises were gradually banned. After that, the cultivation of immortals became more and more prosperous, and this was the current world of immortal cultivation. Luo Li said that the way they practiced in the merman race was biased towards the ancient monks, meaning Chen Daoxian had already made it very clear. "I am afraid they are really short of food. Although there are large groups of monsters under the sea, monsters are not weak chickens. How can they be so easy to hunt? Besides, monsters all appear in groups. The mere people want to hunt down the monsters, and the monsters also want to hunt them. This is also the reason why Luo Li and the others are eager to buy weapons." Hearing Luo Li saying that they were short of food, a plan that had long been brewing in Chen Daoxian's heart was brought up by him. "Miss Luo, have you embarked on the path of body refinement in addition to the path of qi refinement?" Hearing this, Luo Li first nodded, then shook his head again. Our body training is a little different from your human body training. Speaking of this, she laughed. We have learned about your human race's body training methods, and the consumption of resources is too terrifying. The cultivation path of our merman is equivalent to a simplified version of the combination of body refining and chi refining. Chen Daoxian didn't know what the simplified version of body refining and chi refining was, but thinking about the late Third Order powerhouse of the merciful patriarch Zhou Mubai, a monk on the first floor of the Purple Mansion, was almost beheaded, and he knew that the cultivating methods of the merman were not very good. After thinking about it, Chen Daoxian continued, I think in addition to weapons, our Chen family will be able to trade spiritual rice with your merman in the future. Lingmi. Luo Li's eyes lit up slightly. Obviously, she knew what Lingmi was. Seeing Luo Li's happy appearance, Chen Daoxian finally tried to see it, and said, since both of us have agreed to enter into in-depth cooperation, it is very important to have a unified transaction currency. Hearing this, Luo Li felt a little embarrassed. Because the recognized trading currency of the human race is the spirit stone, and all the spirit stones of the merman race are already here. Seeing Luo Li's embarrassed look, Chen Daoxian said with a smile, actually it doesn't matter if you don't have spirit stones. Miss Luo, I don't know if you have heard of the contribution system in the Immortal Clan? What is the contribution system? Simply put, the clansmen hand over resources such as spirit stones, spirit minerals, and spirit beads to the clan, and then they can get the family's contribution points, and then with these contribution points they can exchange resources such as spirit stones, spirit beads, and spirit minerals. What do you mean, use the contribution points of the Chen family to replace our transaction currency? Luo Li finally reacted and asked. Yes, that's what it means. Seeing Luo Li's hesitant expression, Chen Daoxian said, Miss Luo is not worried about our Chen family, for fear that we will embezzle your things and not admit it, or, no, I believe you. Luo Li twisted and said, that's it. I'm afraid that the two sides will forget how much they contributed, or the two sides may not be able to tell. You understand what I mean? I understand what Miss Luo means. Chen Daoxian took out 2 blank jade slips from the storage bag and entered 2 sets of numbers into them. These 2 jade slips were entered by me with the number 96756, which represents 96,756 spirit stones. Chen Daoxian handed the jade slip to the other party. In the future, if you trade with my Chen family again, you can use the contribution points in this jade slip to trade with my Chen family. How many spirit stones are spent at that time? We can dedicate as many contribution points as possible. Hearing this, Luo Li's eyes lit up. She took the jade slip and said with some malicious intent, aren't you afraid that I can change the numbers in this jade slip at will? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian shook the jade slip in his hand and said, I still have a backup. This transaction model requires absolute trust between the two parties, otherwise it will not continue. Our Chen family is willing to believe in the Mare people. Hearing Chen Daoxian's sincere words, Luo Li couldn't help feeling ashamed for her cleverness. She raised her head, nodded earnestly, and said, since your Chen family is willing to trust us, we are naturally willing to trust you. At this moment, the relationship between the two sides became unprecedentedly harmonious. In the end, Luo Li said in a joking tone, are you going to count the spirit stones and spirit minerals? Chen Daoxian shook his head and said with a smile, I believe you. Seemingly touched by this sentence, Luo Li gave Chen Daoxian a deep look, then turned over and jumped into the sea. Immediately afterwards, the sharks put down all kinds of materials and put the flying sword into the white giant shell. Then they jumped into the sea one by one and disappeared. After half a cup of tea, on the sea surface dozens of kilometers away from Guanhai Pavilion, a woman with a beautiful face emerged from the sea, looked at the white figure on the Guanhai Pavilion from a distance, smiled slightly, and disappeared into the sea. Chapter 63. Back to Shuanghu Island. The sky was already white with fish belly. Looking at the rising sun rising from the sea, Chen Daoxian touched several storage bags pinned to his waist and was satisfied. The significance of promoting the Chen family's contribution points to the merman this time is not just a white wolf with empty gloves. The greater significance of this move lies in the financial control of the Mare people. Don't look at the fact that the Chen family is still weak, but in fact it has gradually controlled the weapons and equipment of the merman. coupled with Chen Daoxuan's control over the currency of the Mer people, the economy of the Mer people is bound to be controlled in the future. Not to mention that when Chen Daoxian sells spiritual rice to the Mer people, he will control the food of the Mer people. A force when its military, economic, and even rations are controlled by another force, say it is not a vassal and outsiders will not believe it. However, what Chen Daoxian has done, the Mer people seem to have not noticed it. This is also the disadvantage that all systems in this field are relatively backward. Of course, if Chen Daoxian wants to completely control the mermen, he must make the absolute strength of the Chen family surpass the opponent. Otherwise, others will have the ability to flip the table at any time. Only when the hard power of the Chen family exceeds that of the mermen, will this kind of control be extremely firm, so that it will not have the slightest resistance to resist. Just returned to the Feijian factory on Shuanghu Island. Chen Liangyu trotted over and said, "Young patriarch, the patriarch is back." Oh! Hearing that the 13th uncle Chen Xianhe was back, Chen Daoxian was slightly taken aback, and immediately knew what was going on. It must be that the Hongyin Feijian shop in Guang'an Prefecture was too busy, and the 50 Feijian he brought with him were sold out. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian nodded with a smile. "I'll go find Uncle 13. Less, young patriarch," Chen Liangyu said carefully. The patriarch said, "You don't need to look for him first. The work of producing flying swords is more important. You can go to him after you are done with today's work of refining flying swords." Heard. Chen Daoxian laughed dumbly. He knew that Chen Xianhe was very happy when he learned that the family had 9 more immortal seedlings. Because of the spiritual eyes of the family, it is impossible to support so many cultivators of the Chen family. Now it has become an urgent matter to cultivate a spiritual vein for the Chen family. Finished today's work. Chen Daoxian put the 5 freshly refined flying swords into the storage bag, and then used the wind fighting technique to fly towards Chen Xian's cave in the Red Copper Mountains. Who knows, after looking around, Chen Xianhe is not in the cave. After thinking about it, he returned to his cave. Really? Outside his cave, Chen Daoxian found Chen Xianhe. At this time, he was talking to the 9 immortal seedlings of the Chen family, and the scene was full of laughter. Looking at the happy scene in front of him, Chen Daoxian couldn't help showing a smile. As soon as he lowered his body, Chen Xianhe looked at him. "Uncle 13. Chen Daoxian bowed his hands to Chen Xianhe and smiled. "Well, are you done?" Chen Xianhe smiled and nodded. "Young patriarch. Young patriarch." The 9 immortal seedlings of the Chen family saw Chen Daoxian and greeted him one after another. It seems that the diligent teaching during this period has made Chen Daoxian an incomparably majestic image in the crowd. Seeing this scene, Chen Xianhe nodded slightly. These 9 immortal seedlings will be the pillars of the Chen family in the future. They fear Chen Daoxian so much, and they will make Chen Daoxuan's rule over the Chen family easier in the future. Chen Daoxian didn't think about it so much. Seeing the children playing and playing, he couldn't help but straighten his face and said solemnly, "So joking, have you completed today's practice homework?" Hear this. The faces of the immortals froze. Chen Daochu walked out of the crowd, bowed his head and said with shame, "Patriarch Hui, it's not finished yet." Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's face became more serious. The way of practice lies in perseverance. If you are slack today, you can be slack every day. Haven't I told you about the truth that a 1,000-mile embankment collapses into an ant's nest? Hearing this scolding, everyone bowed their heads one after another, not daring to look at him. Chen Xianhe saw that Chen Daoxian was reprimanding the younger generation in the clan, and he did not say anything to defend it. He knew that this was the time when Chen Daoxian established his prestige among the Chen family's children, and he must not destroy it. Really? After being reprimanded by Chen Daoxian, everyone bowed their heads and admitted their mistakes, and honestly ran to complete today's practice homework. "See this scene," Chen Xianhe said with a smile. "Compared to me, you are much stricter in controlling these little guys." "No way," Chen Daoxian shook his head with a smile. "These little guys just like to play, except for the 3 little guys, Chen Daochu, Chen Daolian and Chen Daolin, who are a little calmer if the others don't care. They are usually like happy rabbits." Hearing this, Chen Xianhe nodded slightly. "Yes, speaking of which, your cultivation has never bothered me much." Hearing this, Chen Daoxian didn't know how to explain it. He couldn't say that he came from transmigration, and he had a mature soul in his body. He had to change the subject and said, "By the way, when Uncle 13 is back this time, is the Comprehension store out of stock?" "Right." Seeing Chen Daoxian talking about the business, Chen Xianhe said solemnly, "As our Comprehension store becomes more and more famous, more and more scattered repair customers come to our store to buy Feijian. In order not to offend these loose cultivators, the old man can only shorten the time interval of the lottery. No 50 Feijian sold all in less than 2 months." Chen Xianhe spread his hands with a helpless expression on his face. There were no flying swords for sale in the Hongyin Feijian store, so Chen Xianhe couldn't stay in the Sangxiafang market. Therefore, only the family's Songlong cargo ship returned to Shuanghu Island and wanted to pick up another batch of goods. Seeing him like this, Chen Daoxian pursed his lips and said with a smile, "It's not a coincidence that you came here. Most of the flying swords produced by the family during this period of time have been traded with the Mer people." Chen Xianhe was about to ask about the matter, but Chen Daoxian took the initiative to say it. He took 2 steps forward and said excitedly, "How? Have you gathered the spiritual stones for cultivating spiritual veins this time?" Chen Daoxian nodded, cupped his hands and said, "Fortunately, I didn't lose my life. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha." Chen Xianhe couldn't help laughing wildly. This kind of wanton laughter, Chen Daoxian remembered that it was only after Chen Xianhe learned that the perverted refining tool such as the Rongling furnace was invented last time. Even Chen Xianhe today is happier than that day. If the melting furnace has just been manufactured, Chen Xianhe just saw the hope of the family to cultivate the spiritual veins. At this moment hope becomes reality. The Chen family really must have their own spiritual veins. The Chen family has been based on Shuanghu Island for nearly 300 years, and finally has the foundation of inheritance. In the future, unless there is a major change in Wan Xinghai, as long as the spiritual vein is in hand, the Chen family will not cut off the inheritance. This made Chen Xianhe, who had a long-cherished wish, not excited. Chen Xianhe is a little regretful now, and if he knew it, he would have Chen Daoxian come to him earlier. But after thinking about it, it was not too late to know at this time, so he grabbed Chen Daoxian's hand and said, "Come on, tell me about the transaction with the Mer people." "Okay." Chen Daoxian smiled and walked into the cave with Chen Xianhe. Outside the cave, Chen Shixianmio was still practicing swordsmanship while shouting. In Chongping County, a woman from the Izumo country who was married to a woman caressed her slightly bulging belly. The entire Shuanghu Island presents a vibrant scene. Chapter 64. Inside the cave. In front of the tea table, the two sat opposite each other. Chen Daoxian poured a cup of spiritual tea for Chen Xianhe himself, and said with a smile, "That's how it happened." Chen Xianhe took the spirit tea handed over by Chen Daoxian, frowned and said, "Daoxian, why do you want the Mer people to use my Chen family's contribution points? If I remember correctly, my Chen family has no contribution points at all." Obviously, Chen Xianhe does not understand what financial sovereignty is. Chen Daoxian couldn't explain it to him for a while, so he simply explained, "One is to make the transaction between our 2 clans more convenient, and second, it is also to allow the Mer people and my Chen family to conduct exclusive transactions." "Exclusive deal?" Chen Xianhe grasped the key point in Chen Daoxian's words. He quickly wondered what the exclusive deal meant. In the process of continuous trading between the 2 clans, once the Merman clan holds a large number of contribution points from the Chen family, in the end, in addition to choosing to trade with the Chen family, they can also use the contribution points of the Chen family to trade with other families. Wanting to understand this level, Chen Xianhe looked at Chen Daoxian with admiration in his eyes. Seeing Chen Xianhe looking at him like this, Chen Daoxian was also a little uncomfortable. He quickly changed the subject and said, "By the way, 13th uncle, where do you think the spiritual veins of our Chen family should be placed?" Hearing about the spiritual pulse, Chen Xianhe really couldn't care less about the Mer people's use of the Chen family's contribution points. His eyes lit up first and then solemnly said, "I think it is more appropriate to be in the Red Copper Mountains." "How can you see it?" Chen Daoxian asked. "The Red Copper Mountains are where my ancestors of the Chen family practiced with a strong atmosphere of practice, and most of our caves are built in the Red Copper Mountains and," Chen Xianhe said, and found that he couldn't say much good. It seems that the Red Copper Mountains have no advantage other than the relics of the ancestors of the Chun family. As for the Dongfu, as long as you mobilize the Chun clan, it doesn't matter how much you want to build. After thinking about it for a long time, seeing Chan Daoxian looking at him comfortably at the old god, Chan Xianhe felt a little angry and said, "Okay, don't sell it. Where do you think it is suitable to build the spiritual vein? Judging from your appearance, you should have already made up your mind." Chen Daoxian put down the spirit tea in his hand, nodded and said, "There are indeed some ideas." Chen Xianhe raised his head. "Then talk about it." Chen Daoxian pondered for a moment and said, "Uncle 13, where do you think the most important place in my Chun family is now?" "It goes without saying, of course it's the Feijian factory." Chen Xianhe didn't even think about it, and immediately said, "Although the Hongyin Feijian factory has only 5 production rooms, there are only 15 workers together, and even with Chan Daoxian there are only 16 workers. But it was these 16 people who fulfilled the long-cherished wish of the Chun family's ancestors for hundreds of years, and earned a spiritual vein for the Chun family. True. The most important reason for the Chun family to earn this spiritual vein is that they have obtained unimaginable profits from the transaction with the Mer people. But even without the Mer people, with the terrifying production capacity of the Hongyin Feijian factory, the Chun family will be able to earn enough spiritual stones to cultivate spiritual veins in a few years at most. This point, Chan Xianhe, who has made the flying sword business prosperous in Sangxiafeng City, Guang'an Prefecture, firmly believes in it. Since the Feijian factory is the core of my Chin's family, and the spiritual veins are also an indispensable training place for my Chin's cultivator, why can't the two be combined into one? Chen Daoxian asked back. You mean? Chen Xian's eyes lit up. That's right. I suggest placing the spiritual veins in the Shuanghu Island industrial zone. Although Chen Xianhe didn't know the meaning of the strange name of the industrial zone that Chen Daoxian came up with, he did not object. Just like he named the refining workshop Hongyin Feijian factory, Chen Daoxian has many practices that Chen Xianhe can't understand, but they have played a good role in the development of the family. After a long time, Chen Xianhe stopped talking about what he didn't understand. It's the same this time. Although Chen Xianhe really wanted to place the spiritual veins in this place in the Red Copper Mountains, Chen Daoxian's words were obviously more reasonable. Except for a few relics of Chen's ancestors, there really doesn't seem to be much to be missed in the Red Copper Mountains. The copper ore has been exhausted, and now there is a more advanced Feijian factory, and even the ground fire room has been dusty for a long time. Do the math. Apart from Chen Daoxian's depleted spiritual eyes, there seems to be nothing of value in the Red Copper Mountains. Such a worthless barren mountain, what is there to be nostalgic about? Chen Xianhe thought and sighed deeply. What's the matter, Uncle 13? Do you think anything is wrong? No, there is nothing wrong. Your choice is right, very good. Chen Xianhe looked lonely, but forced a smile and said. Chen Daoxian naturally couldn't understand Chen Xian's mentality, and he was now completely caught up in his longing for the future development of the Chen family. Cultivate spiritual veins, select a large number of immortal seedlings, train apprentices for refining, expand the scale of Feijian factories, and step by step occupy the market of scattered repair Feijian in Guang'an Prefecture, and even other provinces. Can be said. According to Chen Daoxian's plan, the Chun family on Shuanghu Island will inevitably rise. He may face some pressure from family forces in the process of his rise, but with Qinyuan Jianzong's control over Wan Xinghai, Chen Daoxian believes that he can endure these pressures. After all, the current Wan Xinghai is not the chaotic Wan Xinghai that was thousands of years ago. In the current Wan Xinghai, as long as you don't violate the decrees of the Qinyuan sword sect, you basically don't have to worry about which immortal clan dares to blatantly destroy the door of the small clan. This is also the reason why a small family like the Chun family is obviously weak, but it is still not destroyed by the big family and robbed of cultivation resources. On the one hand, a small family like the Chun family has few resources, and the big family dislikes it. Another important reason is the shock of the Qinyuan sword sect, so that the immortal cultivators in Wan Xinghai dare not take a step. Not long after Qinyuan Jianzong dominated Wan Xinghai, there was a nascent soul family who didn't believe in this evil, but relying on their strength, they destroyed a whole family of foundation-building families, and even the others' ordinary clansmen were not spared. For this reason, Qinyuan Jianzong was furious, and the previous suzerain took action personally, beheading Yuanying Zhenjuan of the Yuanying family, and beheading all the cultivators of his family. As for the ordinary people of the Yuanying family, they were treated as slaves and sold to various states in Wuxia. A prestigious nascent soul family was exterminated like this, which was extremely miserable. So far, no immortal clan has dared to ignore the decrees issued by Qinyuan Jianzong. At least before the decline of Qinyuan Jianzong, no family dared to take a step beyond the thunderous pool. Not to mention that the Qinyuan sword sect is in full swing now, and the entire Xianqing Dao League cannot raise its head in the Izumo Kingdom. The immortal cultivating clan of Wan Xinghai would not dare to make mistakes. Maybe they dared to take the risk of some secret tricks, but no one in Wan Xinghai dared to do this kind of door-to-door annihilation of the whole family. Chapter 65. Saw Chen Daoxuan's excited look. The loneliness on Chen Ziyan's face quickly subsided. He smiled mysteriously and said, "Dao Xian, guess what I brought back this time?" "What?" Chen Daoxian said curiously. Hearing the words, Chen Xianhe didn't speak. He patted the storage bag with his hand, and a jade bottle with a whole body of emerald green appeared on the tea table. "This is..." Chen Daoxian took the jade bottle on the table, opened the seal of the jade bottle, and a strange fragrance came out. "Tong Mai Dan." Looking at the round pale yellow medicinal pill in the jade bottle, Chen Daoxian said in surprise. Chen Xianhe nodded and said with a smile, "It's Tong Mai pill, this time just in time for Zhou's Baodan Pavilion to refine a new batch of spirit pills. This Tong Mai pill is one of them. Although Tong Mai pill is only a first-order elixir, because it is an elixir for immortal seedlings to cross the mortal realm. Among all first-order elixir, this elixir is the most expensive. In Guang'an Prefecture, the market price of a Tong Mai Dan is generally 500 spirit stones, and it depends on whether the medicine store has stock. In Guang'an Prefecture, the Zhou family is the largest elixir dealer, and in Zhou's Baodan Pavilion, there are all kinds of first-order elixir. For example, the spiritual pills for auxiliary practice and the spirit pills for detoxification and qi recovery. Zhou's Baodan Pavilion has been supplying them continuously for a long time. As long as the monks have spiritual stones, they can buy them. But there is only one elixir, and money may not necessarily buy it. That is the breakthrough medicine pill. Breakthrough pills are generally divided into two types. One is an pill that assists in breaking through a small realm, such as this kind of elixir from the early stage of qi refining to the middle stage of qi refining. This kind of medicinal pill is generally a little more expensive than the auxiliary cultivation medicinal pill, but the price is limited, and it will not exceed double the price at most. On the other hand, the price of another great realm-breaking pill is terrifying. For example, the Tong Mai pill that directly crosses from the mortal realm to the qi refining stage, and even the foundation establishment pill that breaks through from the great perfection of qi refining to the foundation establishment stage, all belong to this kind of great realm-breaking pill. The price of this kind of medicine pill is generally more than 10 times that of the same level of auxiliary cultivation medicine pills, and it is often priceless. Tong Mai Dan is a little better, after all, the medicinal materials and difficulty of refining it are not too high, and the supply is relatively sufficient. Generally speaking, as long as you have the patience to wait in Zhou's Baodan Pavilion, you can always buy it after a while. But the second-order spiritual elixir is different. As long as this kind of elixir appeared in the elixir shop, it would definitely be robbed by the monks. Therefore, the foundation establishment pill usually does not appear in the medicine pill shop, but is auctioned at the auction house. Basically, the minimum auction price for a foundation establishment pill also fluctuates between 30,000 and 40,000 spirit stones. If there are monks stuck at the time node of breaking through the foundation building, there are not a few people who go bankrupt to buy foundation building pills. At that time, it is difficult to say how much it will soar. In the history of Zhou's auction house, it is not unheard of for the 100,000 spirit stones to be auctioned for the foundation establishment pill. Of course, this level of sky-high price is rarely seen. Usually, a monk prepares 50,000 spirit stones, which is enough to buy a foundation pill. In the final analysis, a foundation-building cultivator is still inferior to the spiritual veins that can be passed on to the family from generation to generation. Not to mention that if the monks use the foundation establishment pill, there is a risk of failure to establish the foundation. For the major forces, the value of the foundation establishment pill can't compare to the strategic resource of the spiritual vein. Otherwise, the Zhou family would not be willing to auction the foundation establishment pill, but they would never sell spiritual veins to the public. Playing with the jade bottle in his hand, Chen Daoxian was full of joy. He and his 13th uncle Chen Xianhe really had a good heart. He had just prepared the spiritual stone for cultivating the spiritual veins, and Chen Xianhe sent the Tongmai pill. Thus, these 9 immortal seedlings of the Chen family can quickly cross the mortal realm and officially enter the qi refining period. Chen's immortal Miao entered the qi refining period, not only adding 9 qi refining monks to the Chen family, but the greater significance is that Chen Daoxian can teach them to refine weapons. Once Chen's immortal Miao masters even the most basic method of refining the red shadow flying sword, the Feijian factory will usher in a new round of expansion. By the time, the production capacity of the Hongyin Feijian factory is bound to skyrocket. Whether it is the loose repair market in Guang'an Prefecture or the Merman market, the Chen family can satisfy them. Unlike now, they patronize the Merman market, but the Chen family is unable to occupy the broader scattered repair market in Guang'an Prefecture. Unfortunately, there are only 5 Tongmai pills here, only enough for 5 people to break through to the qi refining stage. Chen Daoxian is a little bit insufferable. Hearing this, Chen Xianhe said angrily, Chen Daoyuan is only 5 years old, and there are a few other boys who are only 6 or 7 years old. Do you expect such a young child to break through the qi refining period, and after learning the refining process with you, he will enter the Feijian factory to work? Chen Daoxian choked for a while. Patronizing the expansion of the scale and production capacity of the Feijian factory, but ignoring the age of Chen Jiaxianmiao. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian said, It's Daoxian who is too impatient. You. Chen Xianhe shook his head. I'm always so anxious, since you took over the Chen family on Shuanghu Island, the family's development has been fast enough. When I came back this time, I could hardly believe that this was the Chen family when I saw the lively appearance of Chongping County. Daoxian, we immortals have a long lifespan, at least you have a long road ahead so you don't have to fight for the day and night. Daoxian has been taught. Chen Daoxian respectfully bowed his hands. Indeed, as Chen Xianhe said, the crazy accumulation of money during this period of time has made Chen Daoxian a little lost, and he only wants to continue to grow the Chen family, the sooner the better. But some things don't get better sooner. For example, there are only 1,000 children in the Chen clan, and there are only 9 immortal seedlings in the Chen clan. Together with him and his 13th uncle, there are only 11 monks. And the Izumo women who bought it back had their children yet to be born. The Chen family is now like a butterfly waiting to break out of its cocoon. Only after surviving this pre-dawn darkness will it usher in a real outbreak. Otherwise, even if Chen Daoxian tried to collect more wealth for the Chen family, would they have enough monks to protect the Chen family? Obviously not. Although Chen Daoxian asked himself that his strength was not weak among the cultivators in the qi refining period, he was definitely not a match for the cultivators in the foundation building period. Not to mention the foundation building cultivators, even those 9th level qi refining cultivators with top strength, as long as they can withstand the explosion of his 3 axes, Chen Daoxian is basically not an opponent. Therefore, the Chen family is still very weak. Although this is Wan Xinghai with the decree of Qianyuan Jianzong, it is not a peaceful environment in the past life after all. If the hard power of the Chen family is insufficient, they will still face great risks. For example, if the immortal clan really wanted to destroy the Chen family, they could use the hands of monsters. If Qianyuan Jianzong does not have enough evidence at that time, this matter will only be settled. After thinking about this layer, Chen Daoxuan's eyes gradually became clearer. He cupped his hands and said, Uncle 13, don't worry, I will definitely not let the cultivators in the clan drop their cultivation. It would be nice if you knew that. Chen Xianhe nodded with satisfaction. He was afraid that Chen Daoxian would be confused by the spirit stone and forget what is the foundation of a family. For the cultivator family, whether it is spiritual stones, spiritual veins or other cultivation resources, it is essentially to improve the cultivation and strength of the cultivators in the clan. If you only care about earning spirit stones and don't care about the cultivation base of the family cultivator, then for the Chen family it is a crooked path which is absolutely unacceptable. Chapter 66. The next day. Shuanghu Island Industrial Zone. Chen Xianhe and Chen Daoxian stood in the sky, overlooking the Hongyin Feijian factory on the vast plain. In the eyes of the two of them at this time, the Hongyin Feijian factory was like a matchbox sitting on a plain surrounded by wilderness, very abrupt. Around Feijian factory, apart from an official road connecting Chongqing County and Shuanghu Island Port, there are only a few dormitory buildings under construction. What is that? Chen Xianhe pointed to the 5-story high-rise buildings next to the Feijian factory and asked. Looking in the direction of Chen Ziyan's finger, Chen Daoxian smiled and said, "That is the workers' dormitory area that I ordered Chen Gongqiao to build." Speaking of this, Chen Daoxian sighed. There are still too few craftsmen in the clan. Now there are too many buildings to be built in the clan, and there is a serious shortage of craftsmen. Hearing this, Chen Xianhe added, "Yes, it's not just craftsmen. Our Chen family's population has been decreasing since the cultivators of the immortal generation were completely destroyed. In recent years, the number has dropped to less than 4,000. Talking about the history of family decline, Chen Xianhe couldn't help feeling sad. But soon after seeing the looming Chongqing County town at the end of the line of sight, Chen Ziyan's expression recovered, and he said with relief, "But fortunately all this has passed. My Chen family is about to have its own spiritual veins, and it will never be the same as in the past. Like rootless duckweed." Chen Daoxian nodded heavily, and the two uncle and nephew smiled at each other. "Is it right here?" Arriving at the industrial zone, Chen Xianhe looked around the surrounding environment and asked. Chen Daoxian nodded. According to the ancient books, the first-order spiritual veins can cover up to 10 miles of land, and it is only a dozen miles away from the Feijian factory. Outside the coverage area of the spiritual veins, you can reach the Feijian factory, which is very convenient. "In that case, let's get started." Chen Xian nodded and said. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian patted one of the many storage bags around his waist, and the next second, the materials for arranging the Yunling Great Array flew out of the storage bag. Chen Xianhe saw this, took a step back, and watched Chen Daoxian's formation. As a refiner, Chen Daoxian's formation skills are very high. Among the 100 arts of immortality, the refiner's formation skills are second only to the formation master's. Because refiner and array master are the two major professions specializing in formation. In the process of refining the magic weapon, the last step needs to be a fusion array. The so-called fusion formation is the fusion of formation and refining materials into one. It is conceivable that the refining master's formation attainments are. If the formation skills are not enough, the refiner will not even be able to outline the formation lines, not to mention the fusion formation. Not to mention the traditional array masters, they not only can arrange formations but even create formations. The formation masters of the same rank have higher formation skills than the refiners. As for the first-order spirit formation, Chen Daoxian had already comprehended it, and as long as the spirit stones were in place, the formation could be arranged immediately. I saw that he placed the materials for the array formation one by one on the wilderness plain. 2 hours later, all the formation materials were arranged by Chen Daoxian, which outlined a mysterious formation pattern. Okay, the next step is to place the spirit stone on the array node. After arranging the Yunling Great Array, Chen Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. See this scene. Chen Xianhe stepped forward and said, "Do you want me to help?" Hearing this, Chen Daoxian glanced at Uncle 13 suspiciously. Seemed to be stimulated by Chen Daoxian's eyes. Chen Xianhe blew his beard and said, "What kind of eyes are you looking at? Your uncle and I have also learned the inheritance of family artifact refining back then. Although I didn't get started, I still have a little bit of formation skills. Otherwise, how do you think my Chen family's fire room came from?" Hearing Uncle 13 mention the family's fire room, Chen Daoxian couldn't help laughing, not to mention that he forgot about it. Since Uncle 13 can arrange the formation of the fire room in theory, there is no big problem for him to arrange the great spiritual formation. After all, this is only a first-order array. Not to mention that he is only helping him place spirit stones at the formation nodes. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian hurriedly handed over his apology and said, "Don't blame Uncle 13. It's messed up if your nephew cares." Chen Xianhe didn't really get angry with Chen Daoxian, but seeing that his family's spiritual veins were built, he didn't help at all, and he always felt a little uncomfortable. Chun Daoxian didn't think so much. He took another storage bag. The next moment, spirit stones flew out from the storage bag. Carefully counted, more than 100,000. These spirit stones are already all the savings of the Chun family. Although theoretically, 100,000 spirit stones can cultivate spirit veins. But in order to make sure nothing goes wrong, Chun Daoxian also took out the only 2,000 spirit stones left in the clan library. In other words, the number of spiritual stones stacked in front of the two of them now exceeds 100,000. So many spiritual stones are piled up on the ground, forming a hill, which is really eye-catching. Is also an island like Shuanghu Island, which is deserted for thousands of miles. If it were placed in Guang'an Prefecture, even if there was a decree from the Zhou family, there would be jealous loose cultivators who would take risks. Chun Xianhe saw so many spiritual stones piled up in front of him for the first time, and he was a little lost for a while. Although last time he saw that the storage bag that Chun Daoxian handed him contained more than 60,000 spirit stones. But the more than 60,000 spirit stones were placed in the storage bag after all, so there was no shock to pile them up in front of him. Thinking of this, Chun Xianhe took a deep breath. True Qi wrapped a part of the spiritual stone in the storage bag and flew towards the formation node. Chun Daoxian put away the other spirit stones and flew in the opposite direction. With the cooperation of the two, all the spiritual stones were finally placed until sunset. Returned to the respective location, Chun Xianhe glanced at Chun Daoxian and said, "Have you arranged everything properly over there? Well, what about Uncle 13? It's all set up too." Hearing this, the two of them both breathed a sigh of relief, and then burst out laughing. The two laughed for a while. Chun Xianhe handed over the remaining spirit stones in the storage bag and said, "You can take these spirit stones back into the family vault." Looked at the storage bag that Chun Xianhe handed over. Chun Daoxian shook his head and said, "Uncle 13, you have already spent all the spirit stones that sold Feijian for the purchase of Tongmai pill this time, and the remaining more than 2,000 spirit stones should be taken back to Guang'an Prefecture to purchase supplies." Bar. Chun Xianhe knew what the supplies in Chun Daoxian's mouth were referring to, so he nodded and said, "Okay, finish the business." Chun Daoxian took out a spirit stone from his storage bag, looked at the baby's fist-sized spirit stone with a faint white mist, and murmured, "Is this the power of creation?" Chun Xianhe looked at the spirit stone in Chun Daoxian's hand, nodded and said, "Yes, it is only by virtue of the power of creation in the spirit stone that the spirit veins can be cultivated." Hearing the words, Chun Daoxian sighed. "It's amazing, worthy of the name of creation." Chun Xianhe smiled and said nothing. As a common currency for monks to trade, the value of spiritual stone itself cannot be as simple as the little spiritual energy it contains. Otherwise, since the spiritual veins can continuously generate spiritual energy, what is the use of spiritual stones? Not to mention that there is not much spiritual energy in the spiritual stone, which is not enough for cultivators to refine and cultivate. In fact, the spiritual energy contained in the spiritual stone is more like the protective layer of its core force of creation. If there is a prodigal son who absorbs and refines the spiritual energy in the spiritual stone and loses the protection of the spiritual energy, this trace of good fortune will quickly dissipate between the heavens and the earth, which is very miraculous. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.